be devoted to working on our zoning use table tonight. We don't have any applications. I would like to start off with a roll call to establish a quorum. And William Gerlach.
Present.
Chris Shriver, not present. Janice Gomes, not present. William Taylor.
Here, present.
Richard Taylor, I'm sorry. Rosemary Eva.
Present.
I'm Stu Hardy, the chair, and I'm present. Patricia Hilton.
Present.
V.A. Lopes.
Present.
Good, thank you. And we have Peter Bramante. We have Peter Bramante is absent. And I'd like to make a quick announcement about that. I got an email last night from Peter saying that he was resigning effective immediately because of his travel schedule at work. And he didn't feel he could put in the time he needed to put in to be a contributing member to the planning board. So he has decided to step aside, but that's unfortunate because Peter made a great contribution, and we are sorry to lose him from the planning board. We also have Ashley Sweet, our acting interim planner and AO, with us tonight. Todd Romano, our legal counsel, and Ed Rotella, our land use clerk, with us tonight. I think the first item on our agenda is an item to approve money from our budget to pay for a consultant, and this has to do with the work that's being done during the 6-month moratorium on major residential development. As you know, we began that moratorium at the beginning of this year. And during that moratorium, one of our major tasks is to take a look at all of the infrastructure that we have in Tiverton and to determine whether that infrastructure is sufficient to handle all of the residential development that's been interested in developing in parts of Tiverton. And of course that involves water and sewer and roadways and school enrollment. But an aspect of that also involves doing an assessment of our natural resources, our natural infrastructure, so to speak. And so that task involves taking a look at our soil conditions, our groundwater, our watersheds, and surface water supplies to see how they're affected by residential development and where that residential development can go without posing a negative impact on our precious natural resources based on recommendations in our comprehensive plan. And that effort is being headed up by our town administrator, Chris Cotta. Chris has been talking to me about hiring a consultant to do work, to do an assessment of Tiverton's soils and Tiverton terrain based on a low impact development criteria. And this turns out to be a state requirement that is going to be required as part of the annual permit that Tiverton gets under the RIPDES permit. It's not just developers who have to get a RIPDES permit. Towns now have to get a RIPDES permit. And that so-called Phase 2 stormwater, RIPDES stormwater permit is now requires something called an LID, low impact development assessment, to see if our zoning, our subdivision regulations, and any other statutes or ordinances the town has, like our soil erosion and sediment control ordinance, are up to date and actually addressing the issues that need to be addressed in order to achieve the low impact development goals that have been set by the state. So that's just a little bit of background, and I know Ed passed out quite a big package. We have a consultant who was interested, who has made a bid. Chris Cotta would like to accept that bid. I spoke most recently to him just last night, and so this would come out of our budget. And as you all know, we have in our current budget, which ends June 30th, 2024. Did I get that right, Ed?
Yeah,
I always get it. I always mix up June and July, but I guess it ends in June. We have $10,000 in a line item called Legal and Professional Services. It's actually account number 1070, which is the planning board account, line item 7198. And this would, and what I'm suggesting to give ourselves a little bit of a cushion, a little bit of a margin of error, is that we authorize up to $5,000, even though the estimate has come in at $3,000. I've got lots more information on this project because I have been talking to Hayden McDermott, and it really is something the town needs. So I hope you'll all see fit to dip into our budget. We didn't actually have any expenditure during the last fiscal year, and so far this fiscal year we haven't had a single expenditure out of our budget. So I'm actually happy to do this for Chris, because if you don't use it, you're going to lose it. But I need a motion, and once we have a motion, then Chris can take it from there and transfer the money as he sees fit. Does anybody want to make a motion? Actually, if we have a motion in a second, then we can have a discussion. You can ask me any questions you feel like asking.
So moved.
So we have a motion from Dick.
Second.
And a second from Tricia. So discussion. Anybody want to?
Is this a one-shot deal, or is this going to come up in the budget every year?
No, this is pretty much this is something that probably would have to be revisited maybe once a decade. But once we have a pretty good fix on what the soil conditions and the topographical conditions are like, and as you know, we have large parts of town that have saturated soils. Once we map that out and do an assessment of that, then that serves as a database that we can use for all kinds of different things. Zoning maps, for example, zoning districts, what can be allowed where, and our subdivision regulations as well could reflect some of that. Rosemary?
Well, I think it's very nice of you to give us an overview, because I didn't know exactly what it was all about when I got all these pages and pages of information,
know.
but I am concerned. I'm not a rubber stamp.
I actually should have done a one-page memo just
I
summarizing
would
it
have
all.
liked to seen the cover letter that came with this. Normally, I'm not opposed to something like this, but I do like more background. And did this go out for bid?
No.
I mean, is this how, it would be nice if Mr. Carter were here to explain it.
He was here just a minute ago.
You didn't want to see this.
Yes.
Would you like to share with Rosemary that the recommendation for this particular person came from Lorraine Hubert? Because he's already done this for several other towns, and he's currently an assistant planner in the city of Newport, but he has a consulting business on the side. But he did a year-and-a-half internship for Lorraine at URI in the NEMO program, and he did this exact modeling for all of the towns in the, I think it's the Pawcatuck River watershed. So he came very well recommended and very experienced in doing this particular project.
There-
And it's below it's well below the bid requirement for the town.
Understand, but I think,
I'm just letting you know that as extra
Oh,
information.
So just a little bit more information. There's actually something called the MS4 program at the state level. It's a DEM program, and MS4 stands for Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System. And under this program, the state has put together a procedure and all kinds of standards and protocols for each community in the state to actually go through and do an assessment, a low-impact development assessment. So Hayden McDermott will not be reinventing a project or creating a brand-new project. He'll be using a structured format that he has already used in at least one other town. And Lorraine Joubert, Dr. Lorraine Joubert is University of Rhode Island Cooperative Extension Service, and she heads up something called the NEMO program, which is non-point source education for municipal officials. So she does this full-time. That's all she does.
and we've had her, and I respect her very much.
She knows a lot about Tiverton.
She
She's been
certainly
here.
does.
She's actually briefed town council, she's briefed the planning board, but now we're actually getting around to following up on what she's telling us we need to look at. So, does anybody have any further discussion? Yes, Via.
Some questions, just a couple
Absolutely.
questions, digging into this. So I just want to understand the process a little bit. So they do this assessment, which basically gives us an overview of kind of what might be infrastructurally at risk based on soil, what is currently impervious, all of that stuff. I guess my question is sort of, Ted, is there a layer, an option, or is there a next step that gives us some guidance around the guardrails, like maximization, if you will? So understanding where the town is after this assessment, will we know how many more people can our infrastructure hold, or units, or anything like that? I didn't see that in some of the things that he did for Westerly, or if that's even in this, and is that a different assessment that we get later, or this feeds into?
My understanding is that he'll give us the data that we need to set the parameters on development. That's my understanding, and Tricia, is that your understanding as well? You've been part of some of these discussions.
A component of it. I mean, there's a lot of pieces that go together that, and I'm sure Ashley could opine on this even more. I mean, there's infrastructure, and there's public water and public sewer, and then there's, well water, and there's, soil saturation, and how many septic systems you can, so there's a lot of pieces. We'll get some information from him, but what we'll get a lot of that could inform what we do with the zoning ordinances are where we stack up on low impact development, and where our ordinances are either good or weak or need to be improved. And those things, if we change them, will potentially have an impact on the density and where development goes and what kind of development we can have.
Yeah.
Once we kind of fully implement LID,
Yeah.
which we're.
Yeah, I think the
This
focus.
informs that decision.
The
Yeah.
focus is really looking at what the community, what Tiverton has in place now in terms of zoning, subdivision regulations, soil erosion, sediment control, and other related things like that, and what needs to be done to bring that up to state standards.
It's going to identify the delta, right? And then by identifying the delta, we can carve a path to closing that delta.
You got it,
Why isn't he here tonight to give a little presentation?
because he lives in Newport.
So, I've been to Newport to some of his planning meetings. I think it's unfair to you and to Tricia. I mean, and if it were Chris or him,
Rosemary, one of the things that, to keep in mind in all this, and not that anybody's trying to, no one's trying to pull a fast one here, but the moratorium period is relatively short. It's already March.
Understand.
And this particular discussion had to wait until this meeting actually happened, So, no one's trying to slow down the process here. I mean, I think that, I don't know, but, I'm willing, because I have so much respect for Lorraine Schubert, and she's worked in this town so many times, and she's been here to help us so many times, that based on the material that was sent over and based on her recommendation, I'm okay with not saying, okay, well, I want to have this person come over here and see them before I'm, willing to go forward with them. But that's just me.
Well,
So
we have
I'm okay with it.
we have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? Yes, Dick?
Yeah. When I read this thing, it just seemed like 60 hours wasn't enough. I don't see how you can do all that this proposed to go through, just that number of documents to write the spreadsheet up, to do those things. I mean, it seems like a lot more work than you could accomplish in 60 hours. It's just not a whole lot of time. And to produce a product out of that for delivery.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I was surprised at the, at the proposal, and kind of delighted to see a proposal so low.
My sense is that he's done this a number of times.
Yeah.
This is fairly templated.
Yeah.
It's sort of plug and chug, as
Exactly.
my old calculus teacher
Exactly.
would have.
He'll be taking numbers and
Yeah,
plugging them
I mean-
in to a structure that's already been put together.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It's news to me too, but I think it needs to be done. I know it needs to be done because the state's gonna require the town to do it.
I did a little online stalking, and there is a software that they've created that they leveraging this data or something to that effect. So they're going to take all of our data, plug it in, and it will pop out models and give us over-unders. It's starting to seem very interesting.
So are we ready to vote, or would you like some more?
Let's
I
vote.
appreciate everybody's interest in this, by the way, and we need to all get educated on some of this stuff. It's hitting us hard and fast. So if we're ready to vote,
We need more communications and more documentation.
uh,
And,
we got plenty on this particular agenda item.
but there's a lot of missing pieces. I mean, there's
Well,
no
I should have
cover.
done a cover memo, I agree.
It's nothing that Western
just-
Sampson could have done, had the experience, everything
I
else is.
don't know, I haven't read through all of that, so, and I haven't been involved in the conversation, so I can't answer that question. I mean, most likely, yes, but that doesn't mean you should hold up for that reason.
Understand, and I don't mean to hold it up, but it hasn't gone out for bid or anything like that.
Well, there's lots of circumstances where not going out to bid is the wiser thing to do. So I won't say that that's a reason either, but I have not been involved in the conversations and I have not read that in detail, so I don't know what the output is that you're getting. I mean, it is I'll just offer my own, it's a small amount of money. And if it's something that's been done before and he has experience doing it and can give you valuable information, it's probably an important investment.
So we're doing a vote, I believe. So all of those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so, and opposed?
Opposed.
Okay, so we've got passed. So I will alert Chris tomorrow morning so that he can then get in touch with Hayden and take it as he wishes to take it.
One other question, Stu.
yes.
I know that in this, I don't know if this might help Rosemary, but a part of the assessment is that the first step is to have an initial meeting, I'm assuming with us, to ask any questions. So I'm assuming that maybe we could put that on consider it for the next agenda. Woodhaven?
I think it would probably be the small group that Chris has gathered together that meets in his office. But whatever Chris wants to do, we'll, handle it that way. So that brings us to our big task tonight, which is to continue to go through the special use tables, special use permits in the use tables. And at the end of our last session, which was Saturday, February 24, Tricia volunteered to take a look at some of the section called Animals and Agriculture and Animals. And Jay volunteered to take a look at the section called Public Utilities, just to give us, because we had some questions and some needed some more information. Jay is not here, and usually he'll tell me if he's not coming, so I'm not, Deb hasn't heard either, so.
I didn't hear.
So maybe Jay is on the way, but just, so we did that, and also Ashley suggested, and I think we all agreed, that one of the two issues keep coming up whenever we talk about either setting specific and objective criteria or setting performance standards. Two issues come up. One is lighting, and Ashley has recommended that that should be just a standard across the board, universal performance standard that would apply to everybody and everything and all uses, and would be based on the dark skies recommendations, which is the organization that is attempting to address light pollution. So we did that, and then also Ashley has suggested, and I think we all agreed, that parking is another issue that keeps coming up, and that we should probably take a look at that as sort of a universal across the board, one standard that we could apply to just about everybody. And with respect to parking, though, I'd like to just say that that we should be looking not only at how many off-street parking spaces we need given a business's square footage or given the use of a business, but we should also be looking at the design of the parking area. So I think that should be part of the standard. And by that, I'm talking about trying to encourage to break up parking so that it's not all in the front, right on the main road with a big sea of asphalt and the business behind that, but rather to move it around the sides, maybe hide it in the back to some extent, hide the parking in the back, consistent with smart growth principles, and also to design the parking area in a way that kind of breaks up the massing so that you might have little islands or little corridors where shrubs and trees could grow. And so I think we need to look at not only the amount of parking, but also how the parking is designed. So does anybody disagree with that? Hearing no disagreement, I think that's something we could look at. So Ashley, how would you like to proceed now? I'm not quite certain where we left off.
Yep, so a couple of things that I'll mention. So we're gonna start looking at parking. We're gonna start with talking to John and have some questions for John about parking issues and what he sees the issues are with the current ordinance and where the parking problems that he runs into occur and what types of problems those are. so we can begin to look at how to amend the ordinance to address those issues. You know, as good planners, our first instinct is not to just up your parking standards, because that's not usually a good idea. So
Yeah.
we want to look at it carefully.
Yeah.
We want to think about not just increasing the number of required spaces, but
Exactly.
doing other things to improve access to parking, or if there are other areas where there's a municipal lot or there is some on-street parking, we want to look at ways to make people more aware of that, so that parking gets used in conjunction with parking lots, so that we don't have to just increase your parking standards. So just so you understand, that's our initial kind of approach to this. So we're gonna start to look for some examples to give you, so that you can tell us what you like and what you don't like about
Right.
the examples. But we
Right.
wanna tailor those examples directly to the types of parking problems you're having. So we're gonna start with questions and a conversation with John about what his experience is with enforcing parking standards, or when he gets a call about parking, where is this happening, what the issues are. If you have your own individual thoughts about parking, please email them to me, and we'll kind of collect all of that as we start to look at examples we can talk through with you.
Right, that's a great approach, and John's a good place to start. But you know what? Actually, since we've gotten all the way to section 6, we probably need to go back to section 3 and ask Tricia to she's given us a handout now, to walk us through that handout, if that's a good thing to do.
I will, but before that, to Ashley's point about the parking, so, and I think Ashley knows this, but to share with the rest of the group, one of the things that we've talked a lot about in the zoning update committee is going back to having a total lot coverage, which is something that we used to have in Tiverton, and for a bad reason, we got rid of it. And that's really about how much impervious cover you put on a lot, and that includes everything that's impervious, the building, the asphalt parking, all of that. So, the only place right now where there's a requirement on a limit to impervious surface is in the village commercial district and in the watershed districts, the residential part of the watershed districts, which is 10%, which is hard to manage, but that's what it is. And so vis-a-vis the discussion about parking, and in the commercial areas it will be higher, there is a coming discussion about how much lot coverage there should be on any kind of lot in a district, and whether or not you should be able to, pave 100% of your lot or not. So that's gonna factor into the parking, and potentially, if that's the case, it may be a way to encourage in some places for them to put in pervious parking rather than impervious parking, right, if they want to have more. So I just wanted to throw that into the mix of the parking issue too. I'm sorry to just hand this out tonight, but I'm a little behind here. And Stu, I said I'd take a look at the horse boarding thing. I didn't say about all the animals. I only committed to the horse thing. So right now we have kind of a mess in our keeping of animals thing, because there's a section that talks about the keeping of animals and says you can't have swine, but you can have other fur-bearing animals, but it doesn't mention horses specifically, nor does it mention cattle. And then later on, we have something called a riding stable and recreation. And neither of those really work terribly well. So looking at what some other communities have done in Rhode Island, and this is not written in any kind of legally acceptable language, it's just sort of bullet points. Other communities differentiate between a private stable and a commercial stable, and a private stable is an accessory to your residential use. Most of them limit it to like 2 horses or 4 at the max or something like that. You pick a number, a small number. And that, these are horses that, or they could be donkeys or mules, that you keep at home for your own personal enjoyment, and, they're just for you. And it's and, they often set, well, they don't always, but in many cases, they set some amount of minimum acreage per animal. In a lot of cases, for accessory use like this, it's a ½ an acre for each animal. And that ½ acre includes whatever structures that they live in, any paddocks or any pastures. And then they have some setbacks you know, from residential property or any abutting uses. And then, on the other hand, they have a commercial stable, which is basically anything where there is a profit or, you know, activities that happen in consideration of commerce. So that covers everything from, you know, hiring out the horses, to training horses, to selling them on a commercial basis, to boarding them, whatever it is. And it would include some place that has riding lessons or riding academies. It would also, in theory, include anybody who had more horses than the accessory use would allow. So if you happen to have 8 of your own horses that you wanted to keep on your property and you had the room for it, you'd probably, if you're above the number that was set for a private stable, you'd end up in the commercial thing. For that, the minimum lot size in most towns is 5 acres, some are, it's 10, before you can have a commercial stable. And again, it's the same thing, a minimum of a ½ acre for each. The setbacks are more stringent. And the one thing about all of these animal uses, these horse uses, is a minimum, and I missed what the buffer's for. Isn't that good, Tricia? There's a minimum 100-foot vegetated buffer to any wetland, surface water, body stream, or well from any manure pile. That's missing in there. So I haven't had a chance to show these to John because I know it's an issue for him, but that's based on looking at other communities, my recommendation that we go in some sort of direction of private stables versus commercial stables, and then we pick whatever numbers and setbacks we think are appropriate. Most of the commercial stables, unless they're on 10 acres or more, are a special use permit. In Tiverton, it's 5 acres and you're permitted by right. We'd have to pick what we think are appropriate numbers, but that's my research and recommendation on what we do about horse boarding and horse stuff.
So we would also probably need to review the definitions to make sure we define what a private stable is and what
Yeah, you'd have to have, I mean, there's a little bit of a definition there. It's not legally very good, but, you know,
Yeah.
there's a bit of a definition of what's a private stable versus a commercial stable.
Right. So Ashley, does that help a little bit, or?
Yeah, I mean, my question for you guys is, because we have a lot of moving parts, because we have a committee the zoning committee has been working on definitions, so I don't know if we want to bring this back to the zoning committee and let them make those determinations, and then those zoning definitions come to the planning board for review, and you can make changes then, and they can share with you why they made the decision they did on private and commercial, because then you'll see all the definitions together. Because I think there were a couple that we still needed to work on, and so I have somebody working on those, and I can give him this, and he can work this language in, and then you would see a draft of all the definition changes that they've made.
Yeah, that's good.
Right. We just had, the only reason this came up is because there is a special use permit now in the code, so we can wait until something comes back and
To
then
make
just
a
mark that
decision.
as one we have to go back to.
Do we have to discuss whether this falls into section 3 or section 6 at all? I mean, right now, the riding stable and academy is 6G, but section 3 is, if I can get there, farming or raising of animals.
Yeah.
I don't know if a commercial stable falls under,
I don't think it falls
Raising.
under 3. It's
yeah,
not,
it doesn't feel like,
It doesn't, but the state does recognize it as an agricultural activity. I mean, you can qualify for farm, forest, and open space.
Right.
I think that section 3 really should just be renamed agricultural uses as opposed to the farming or raising of animals, because,
Well, you do have stable in E.
it's agricultural.
Yeah, it is
And
as an
he has a
accessory.
stable in it and a barn.
Accessory.
Right.
Hmm?
It's accessory building.
Right,
where the stable is an accessory building.
right.
Which is also what a private stable would be.
It would be. And where that gets a little tricky is, there are commercial stables now that have a residence on the property.
Right.
That's not uncommon.
Right.
So that's why defining them is,
Well, it might, well,
in some other way would be better. Because I can't think of a big one right now that doesn't have a residence on the property. If not more than one residence on the property.
I mean, is the term stable used to address any other type of animal or just horses? Because we have barn too.
Yeah, well, I think
I mean,
it, you can put all kinds of animals in a barn, but stable is pretty much,
For horses,
For horses.
right? So I mean, I might take the word stable out of E and add the use, and then, like you said, maybe change the title of this district, and then I would add in private stable, but I mean, I think a commercial stable is a commercial stable.
it almost feels like the commercial side of this is good for section 3 or appropriate for section 3, whereas the private feels like it aligns. I don't know if the private stable is, well, actually, as I talk that through, I don't know, that doesn't feel like a public recreational use.
it's not.
not.
So, but here's an interesting thing, and I didn't do this because I always said I was dealing with the horse's butt, if we're gonna talk about this. But this is something that we needed, because this has come up in Tiverton before. There are other towns that have ordinances around, for lack of a better description, your accessory chickens, or your accessory goat or something. In other words, there are towns that identify that if you have just a couple, how many chickens you can have in your backyard, basically, as your own personal egg-laying chickens, or your own. And so, and that's considered like an accessory residential use. We don't have that in Tiverton, and we've had situations in the past where people are keeping large numbers of, not necessarily cows, but chickens, goats, sheep in their backyards on half an acre in North Tiverton, and there's 32 animals in the backyard, and we don't really have an ordinance that says you can't do that. So maybe we should be having some ordinances, more animal accessory ordinances that spell that out, that go someplace else other than in agriculture.
Well, I mean, I don't think that this qualifies as a recreation use. I would take G out of section 6.
I'm gonna disagree just because there's one down at Goddard Park in East Greenwich, Warwick. I don't know if that's what the intent was for 6G.
But that's, I don't know the specifics of that, but I think that is still a commercial, like, it's not a recreation. Like, I can't just go pick up a horse and get on it. Like, I have to, like, if there's a commercial operation to that use that is adjacent to or part of Goddard Park, and again, I don't know all the details of how those two things work together, but I'm tempted to move it out of here and put both of them up into section 3 if that were to be relabeled as agricultural uses, because then it's irrelevant whether it's private or public
Right.
or
Right.
nonprofit or whatever. And we've already talked about the idea of trying to get away from assigning uses differently based on who's making money or not making money.
Right.
And keeping horses, I think in both circumstances, is an agricultural use, whether you're doing it for private purposes or whether you're doing it as a commercial enterprise. I think it qualifies in both. That's just my initial thought.
I kind of agree.
So, Do we agree that we want to change the name of this?
Yeah, we were gonna, section 6, we were gonna drop the open and just call it
That we
recreational.
did, I'm talking about on section 3, are we comfortable changing the name of that to agricultural uses?
Yeah, yeah.
Alright, so then what we would do down here on 6 is. I feel bad for whoever's gonna have to do all this.
But it's so desperately overdue that we're doing this.
Ashley, is it just gonna be its own line in section 3?
There's gonna be 2 lines, there's gonna be a private stable and a commercial stable, and we're gonna work on a definition for each of those. We're gonna pull G out of this table and move it up to the top with the others.
And then should we try and figure out, because we really should, like, how many chickens you can keep is like pets, or how many goats or sheep you can keep as pets before, you know.
And that could, I mean, that could differ depending on the zone.
Slapping.
Well, years ago, Bill Eccles, when he was the zoning official, came up with a matrix that limited you to 8 squirrels.
8 squirrels.
And they had so many chickens, so many rabbits, whatever it was gonna be, but it was 8 squirrels in there.
Squirrels.
And we couldn't figure out how you was gonna legislate that, or how do you enforce that?
How do you count squirrels?
Well, the chickens in the trees, do you remember?
Yeah, chickens in the trees.
Yeah. Well, then there was the guy who was
You
like,
needed ground-based
in the neighborhood
chickens.
Who was raising the chickens and he
Come
was,
on.
he was, slaughtering them, which of course by cutting their head off, but then to bleed them out, he was hanging them from a tree in the front yard right next to the bus stop, and this was in a very small neighborhood. And that was, took a while to convince him that that was really not okay, that a dead chicken hanging from the front house.
Alright, so there's what we need to keep track of these things. So we'll need to add sections we'll need to come up with language for these 3 items. And we'll keep adding to this list as we go. The other thing I wanna make note of is what I've done, trying to keep track of what multiple groups are doing in the same document, is Tricia gave me the waterfront district updates based on what the zoning committee has been working on. And they don't 100% align with what you guys have made as recommended changes. So where that happened, I split the cell, like this one, where what the planning board did is in the top cell in green. Actually, this one does work out to be the same. Let me give, so this one actually here, the one below it, the planning board wanted to switch this over to a permitted use. And the zoning committee said this should stay as a special use. So when that happened, when there was a difference, I split the cell and put both of those things in there with the planning board on top and the zoning district committee on the bottom in yellow. So that's how you can tell. So we're gonna have to go back at some point and resolve those
Sure.
between the 2 differences of opinion, but it was the best way I could come up with to keep track of that issue.
So the, I'm trying to remember, and I'm on board.
And so you should only
Waterfront-
find that in the waterfront district, because the
Right.
zoning committee worked on that specific district.
And the zoning committee we thought a bed and breakfast should be permitted by right? With,
Yes,
permitted by right with specific criteria, right?
Yes.
Okay. And the planning board thinks it should stay a special use permit?
No, actually, in this case, the planning board flipped this to a permitted, because green is permitted with performance standards. So that one actually, there is not a difference there, actually, because that technically, the green indicates permitted by right with performance standards. It's just, find another one. So actually, I have to look at this. This might need to move over because that's in the industrial district. I may have put that in the wrong spot. Let's see. There's not a lot of them, but there were some. So I think this one came up because, so this is in the waterfront. The planning board left this as a special use, and the waterfront committee had switched this to a permitted use.
No, we have S.
I don't, I think, I thought we sort of tabled that waiting for a discussion of, because we weren't even sure like where our until we had the meeting with Todd, or had at the last planning board meeting where we discussed this, we weren't even sure like where the authority began and ended. You know, you can't regulate anything in the water, you can only regulate what's on the land, right?
Right.
So I think that one was a left open because we didn't really know, it didn't have a definition. My notes on that say this, we need a definition because we weren't even sure technically what aquaculture is legally and what the beginning is. I'll go back and check my notes. I don't think we made that one permitted. I mean,
All right,
actually, I'm sure of it because it was like, we don't know what to do with
I
this.
have your table, so that's where I pulled these from, so I'll double check and make
And
sure I didn't make a mistake.
and it's possible that I made a transcription error then. It's that I've got a P in there when I didn't
Okay.
need to.
I mean, my 2 cents on this is that we come back to reconcile these.
Yeah.
Like, let's get through the
Yeah, no,
rest of
I think we should
the,
get through the rest of the table, because what I've done, what we're doing is we're starting at the top now, and we're trying to work our way down with coming up with specific and objective criteria and performance standards, and so we will need to get all the way through the table so we can, this group can finish that, and that we can continue to work all the way down to the bottom.
Yeah.
And so we left off, I'll double check these.
I'll
And
double
Sue,
check
I
too.
might send them, this to you and have you check them against your notes as well.
Yeah, because I just had us as an S.
Okay, so we'll double check those and make sure, and then where we left off is right there, on that blue line. I think, right?
I thought
Oh,
we
no,
got
we
through
did,
the rest
we
of-
did, we went through
Rest
that
of six.
section.
Yeah.
So we're
I think
here.
I think we finished that section.
Yeah.
So we're starting on section 8.
Well, we have marina with yacht club. You have
Sorry.
a separate-
Oh, but on,
7.
where are we on? We're on 7?
Mm-hmm.
So this would be section 7, office uses, and the first one is professional home office. And we have S's for all of the residential, the 4 residential districts. Would you like to change that to permitted, and then let Ashley
Can we-
think about, or her team think about what would be appropriate for performance standards?
What is the operational definition of professional home office?
Oh, we
In-
have,
In a world of a lot of hybrid and virtual work, I work full-time from home.
there's actually a proposed definition for that. So. Find this, you sent me.
There's also.
In that definitions thing,
Did I send you the updates?
Yeah, not more than one office or studio of a physician, dentist, attorney, architect, engineer, land surveyor, real estate broker, accountant, insurance agent, or other professional person licensed by law or certified by a recognized professional society or agency, and providing professional services, residing on the premises, and having not more than one employee or associate, and utilizing not more than 250 square feet of floor space.
Okay, which is different than me working for an employer and just
Yeah,
taking meetings from home.
which is a lot of people happened after 20.
Yeah.
yes, but that's why we added, that's why we changed this professional home office. And I think we should make it permitted.
You've put some pretty substantial parameters around it by limiting the size, limiting the number of
Yeah,
employees.
that definition.
That
Well, you have it
really
in the
narrows it.
definition.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, and then the only other thing that goes with it is, right, guess what, is just make sure there's parking, right, for the employee.
Yeah, and that's gonna,
And if
It's
they
gonna
have,
happen to
you know, if they're
everybody.
gonna have a meeting there, or somebody's gonna
Yeah.
come to their house.
Would-
But I'll make those Ps.
Yeah.
yeah. And the situation that Bill is in, and that a lot of other people in Tiverton are in, I don't think we should try to regulate that at all.
That's foolish.
That's
Yeah.
not our business as a town.
It's not.
Would we rename this from professional home office to, based on the definition that Sue just read, professional services home office? To draw better distinction?
I was going to suggest or exempt your situation.
Yeah, 6 of 1, either or,
Right.
but,
In the definition, exempt those working for
yeah,
something.
third-party employers who, yeah.
Exactly. That's something that the government shouldn't get involved in.
Hmm.
So everybody's agreed to that. And so that brings us to B, professional.
Hold on. Sorry. Add to the definition,
I'm
an
sitting here, so I think.
exemption for those working from home for.
To exempt you, Ashley.
Yes, me.
What about people who work from home but were not working for a third party? Like a consultant, and they may be doing virtual calls, but they're working for themselves.
That would fall under that definition.
Yeah,
They're not having people come in.
exactly.
They would be a professional home office where they're essentially operating their own business, but maybe nobody comes and they just do meetings and they're not working for a third-party employer. They own their own business.
I guess in reality, the spirit of the law is that there's no actual interaction happening in that space, right, or very limited.
Yeah, that's the issue.
Maybe have a new use then. Those without customers, meetings, in-person meetings.
I mean, I think
live meetings.
I think it's reasonable that somebody that, if I'm running I'm a landscape architect and I'm drawing plans in my house and I'm not storing materials, I'm not that I might have somebody come to my office and look at the plans. I'm not gonna have 15 people come to my
Right.
office, but I might have 1 or 2 for a
Right.
meeting to look at. I think that's fine. I don't think you're gonna nobody's gonna even know that that's happening for the most part.
I agree.
And that would fall under this definition of
Yeah.
A. And I think you've limited it in size, that, you can't have more than 1 employee. You can't have more than 250 square feet dedicated to the office space. I mean, that's gonna limit
Right.
what goes on there
Yeah.
pretty well.
So what we're saying is that, given the robust and fairly
Definition.
detailed definition, we can flip the S's
I
to
think
Ps in the
Not have a big.
residential. Yeah, I would support that.
So the next item would be 7B, professional and general office, including real estate, insurance.
Was that unanimous, though? I'm sorry, Stu.
Yeah.
Are we all in
Are
agreement
we
to,
gonna change those S's all to Ps?
Yeah, that's the blue becomes permitted.
Okay.
Oh, I thought you had to strike them out.
I do, but
But you
it'll
don't
take
do
us a
it,
lot
right?
longer to do that if I do that while we go
Okay.
through
Duly
this. So
noted.
it's easier to
I get it.
color
Okay.
code and go back
I kept-
after.
I'm
Ashley
like
has her
waiting for you. I'm
system.
like,
It
why is she
seems
not
to be working really well.
Change
Yeah.
those to
Make those
Ps.
Ps.
So now looking at B, given the definition that was just read off for A,
It
there
would-
seems to be some overlap.
It would be anything that exceeds the one, that requirement.
Okay,
So if I have more than
got it.
one
Okay.
employee, more than
Above the threshold.
250
Okay.
spaces, I can't do that in a residential district. I need to go to a commercial zone.
Yep, makes sense.
If you take a look at how this is described, it's very vague, it's very general, and the term et cetera is not very helpful either. I would almost strike that whole damn thing, just get rid of it, and, because we don't have anything in our definitions that, that addresses professional or general office. We don't define that in our definitions. So this is, this line leads to trouble. This whole line leads to trouble.
Well,
Well, hang on a
you have to
second,
have
we do.
something though.
We do. So this is, we should print out all these definitions and give them. So one of the things the zoning update committee has been
Working on the
doing
definitions.
has been adding definitions, not that anybody's approved them. So we have one now that says office, general, commercial. A
Right.
commercial establishment in which the principal use is a personal or professional service and which does not include the sale of commodities at wholesale or retail. Included in the definition of office are medical insurance, finance, law, engineering, or similar professional services.
Perfect.
So we now have something that says office, general, commercial.
So can we change the description of B to match the definition?
So just call it office profession, what was that?
This just says office, general, commercial.
Okay.
Office so let's change that to office, general, commercial, rather than all of the verbiage they have
Or
there.
we can change it and call it a general commercial office if that makes it look better.
My
more
only
professional.
concern is that you're giving it a name that is also the same name as a zoning district, and I don't want to create confusion there. We have a general commercial zone,
Just do general office.
so I would just say, I would say general office.
Okay, so then we can just get rid of the word commercial in the
Yep,
definition.
yep, general
Okay.
office.
And I need to make a note here that we change the definition.
You just have to change the title of the definition.
Can I ask a question? Why is it in the industrial zone, that's a special use permit?
That's existing now.
Okay,
So we.
We haven't gotten there yet.
What we have existing now, we only have two special use permits in this category, and that's in waterfront and industrial. And we have to decide,
But we changed the waterfront to P.
so the waterfront should be P, I think, I agree with that. And then also, the industrial should be P.
Yeah, why not?
Why not? Does
Totally.
everybody agree with that?
Yeah.
P for both waterfront and industrial. And then,
I do have a question about the
and then
industrial.
performance standards would be, I don't know.
So I do have a question around the industrial, and I don't, and as I'm still learning, I don't know what this district is, but thinking about areas that are industrial, there may be safety, like if you think about the quarry or something like that, there may be, if they have to walk through an area that requires a hard hat to get to this office, I don't know. Like, if we're thinking about some of these.
So this is like, think about Longplex,
We're-
like that area,
we're-
yeah.
We're thinking of redefining industrial, or not we, but the zoning revision committee, redefining industrial as basically light industrial, because people keep on saying that we're really calling our industrial part the business part, because we want to emphasize things like long plex, rather than really scary, heavy industry stuff. But your point is a very good one. We need to make sure that in our industrial zone, including our business park, that we have the proper uses. So light industry could cohabit very easily with what we're talking about here, office.
So you need to remember that when you're changing to permitted from a special use permit, you have to tell me if you want it just outright permitted or if you want it to have performance standards, because I have to color code those differently.
Yeah, I think maybe in industrial, it could be flat out permitted. But I think in the waterfront area, that's where we have to be sensitive. And of course, we've got the parking issue already taken care of.
Size.
So the zoning committee flipped that to permitted, but do you,
But I think,
you want performance standards?
I think all of those, I think that one is the performance standards too. There's something, it would be like a size limit or something, so that there's not, I mean, there'll be something.
Okay, green is permitted with performance standards.
Yeah. I think in the waterfront district, size would be an issue.
Yeah.
We don't want to.
You want to cap the size?
Didn't we already discuss?
I think the zoning revision
I'll ask the zoning revision
has
committee.
already come up with a maximum size for anything in the waterfront district.
Yeah,
Not yet.
size and height.
Size
have-
and height, yes.
We came up with the maximum size for the form-based code. We haven't picked the maximum size for the waterfront yet. But I
Okay.
think we're going to, I think that's gonna be it.
Okay, we can deal with it there then. But in the industrial, I think we're just going to make it a permitted, I
Okay.
think. Does everybody agree with that? Okay, so that brings us,
Colors look so much different on the screen.
you,
Yeah, I just gotta make sure.
tell me when you're ready.
I'm ready.
Okay. So that brings us down to bank, credit union, or office building, which is C. Oh, there's nothing there.
No, one and
C,
two.
1 and 2. And there's only one S under bank, credit union, or office building, not including drive-through service. There's only one S, and that's in industrial. Again, I don't see any reason why that shouldn't be a flat-out permitted use. We're talking about a credit union, a bank, a credit union. Now, office building, that's a pretty broad category.
Isn't that what we just had in B? An office building?
I was going to ask a question about this because, I mean, the only distinguishing components of C are the drive-through variable. What makes,
But I will say, not to interrupt you,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
to your point, the zoning committee added E. So it's any of these uses within this category with a drive-through, and that's where they started designating special use permit. So instead of breaking C this way, I think we can strike the first line. If you, yeah.
well, if you're going to have E, that feels like it negates C1 and 2 altogether, because that type of use, be it a bank or a credit union or office building, would be covered
Yep.
under B at this point.
Yeah. You could get rid of
Should be
all
bank, credit, union, financial services,
But
to make a distinguishment from an office building.
but I thought, if I remember correctly, the definition didn't the definition have like banking or,
that. No, well.
like what makes banking different?
So typically, and correct me if I'm wrong, but typically, banks are standalone buildings. Typically.
Unless you got a branch and a Stop and Shop.
Right, but I'm saying.
Not that we have a stop.
But that's not the primary use, that's an ancillary use to the Stop
Sure,
and Shop.
sure.
So when you get, you don't see banks occupy office buildings very often, they want standard.
they're on the ground floor, I
structures
mean-
most of the time.
I was in Boston last week.
But I think it might, if the word finance covers a bank, that's in the definition for a general office.
The only reason why I think a bank would be separate has to do with the exchange of money when armored cars come in and out, because they can be in, like I worked for a bank once upon a time, and they were in, but it has to have a level of egress to get to those armored vehicles. So I think that's why it's called out, but I don't know.
I also think examples from, like, agree, big cities, you have banks all the time that occupy the first floor. That just doesn't happen very often around here. I mean, even in Providence, I would say sometimes that happens, but once you're outside of the city, I think most banks build their own structures. But not, I mean, that may be why it was separated previously, because generally with an office building, you know, you think of like a variety of different types of uses within the same structure. But if the definition includes it and you don't feel any different, the real question is, do you feel like it needs to be regulated differently? If it doesn't, then we should just put it all in the same category, include it in B,
Exactly.
get rid of C 1 and 2.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. That would be my recommendation.
So as long as you're all comfortable with what we're doing with a bank falling under B and the way it's regulated under B,
Yep.
then I would strike C1 and 2.
Yep.
So the only difference is here you used to have a special use permit, whereas here you don't. And same thing here, that's with a drive-through, but you also now have E, where you could tag any of those with a special use permit because of the drive-through.
Trish, I'm sorry, does your definition of general office specifically include bank and credit union?
It says finance, it doesn't say bank or credit union.
So
But we can
finance could be
add-
like a stockbroker, though.
Well,
That's why I'm
we
asking.
can,
about
we can
financial
just make a
advisor.
note we can just make a note to add it. I mean,
That-
it's just like.
I just,
Yeah.
I think you need to make that note if you're going to.
Just
do
Yeah,
this.
it says
Make it-
included in the definition of office are medical insurance, finance, law, engineering, or similar professional services, so we'll just stick banking in there.
That's professional services, and I think that's what my point is. Providing professional
Well, but
services
it says
is
a-
different than a banking
Yeah,
institution.
but it says a personal or professional service, so isn't banking kind of a
It's a personal
service?
service.
I think of it
Yeah,
as.
I mean, but what you're saying is you could throw banking in there and call it.
So, well, let's ask Todd if he's comfortable with this. If it said, a commercial establishment which the principal use is a personal or professional service, which does not include the sale of commodities at wholesale or retail, included in the definition of office are medical, insurance, finance, banking, law, engineering, or similar professional services. Are you comfortable with that? No, you're not.
I'm not, I really do think banks and credit unions are different than a general
Okay, well,
office,
then let's-
different than a general professional office.
So then let's just get rid of or office building, because that's the part
Yes.
that is silly. And we'll just leave bank or credit union there, and then we can get rid of 1 and 2. But we'll just leave bank and credit union there and decide what we
So
do
we're
about it.
gonna get rid of,
You have to. You now have to have some values across the different
Yes.
zones, right? If you're
Yep,
gonna,
so we're gonna do that, and then we're gonna get rid of that. And we're gonna,
Just pick up the values from 1, not including drive-through service, and make those, and then everything else would.
Yeah.
fall on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm done for the day, one good idea.
and
Yeah, you just copy what's below.
this is
P.
Yep.
because you've got E below, right?
Yep.
So that's permitted,
That's an N.
not permitted,
That becomes a P.
permitted, not permitted. be.
Okay, so that brings us down to temporary sales or promotional office in connection with adjacent construction, limited to 1 year. So this would be like, a small office that is trying to sell units in a residential condominium. And so we had that situation with the villages at Mount Hope Bay, and we had a little temporary office down in Stone Bridge, right on the waterfront, for about 1.5 years, 2 years. So what would you like to do here? Right now, we have special use permits for all of the 4 residential districts, because that's where they're gonna be primarily.
Do we have to have this even?
That's what I'm thinking,
Like, do
Trish.
we even have to have this? Couldn't the planning board just say, if they're saying, we're gonna use 1 unit as a model unit, like, for, couldn't the planning board just approve that as, part of their approval that they're gonna have? Because they're not building something, I don't know. Because they're not really gonna build an office, they're gonna take a unit, right? That there's gonna be a model unit, they're gonna have an office.
Or they're gonna put a construction trailer on the property
Mm.
and use that as an office.
So are you suggesting just getting rid of that whole category as irrelevant?
It seems kind of irrelevant.
I mean, can we brainstorm other use cases just to pressure test this?
This is with adjacent construction.
But
So
it's
it'd
not
have to be
explicit.
related to development.
So it has to be related
It has to be
to.
related to a specific project,
Okay.
which is almost always a housing.
I mean, the limited 1 year helps, but the adjacent construction, like when I first read this, I was like, and I'm just being very literal with an example, like I ran a healthcare clinic that was being built, but we had a pop-up. So we weren't selling, but we were working in that pop-up in a different location within where the clinic was gonna be. I don't know if that makes a difference per se, but I didn't necessarily, when I read this, thought about there had to be a connection to why the temporary sales promotion office was there, or that it had to do with the construction. So I don't know if that opens up like a can of worms, potentially.
And it's sales or promotion, so in like your case, that wouldn't.
Your permitted use was the healthcare facility.
It's on premise.
I mean, if you take this out, then there's one of 2 things happens. It's one, it's just not in there, so it's not a permitted use, and then somebody would have to say, I wanna do this, and then they would come, go to the zoning board and ask where they fall in the use category, or John would have to make an interpretation. I mean, I don't think this is gonna, like, you're not gonna see a proliferation of these temporary office spaces across Tiverton, because you're only gonna get one in conjunction with, as Stu said, most likely a residential development, and it's gonna have to be a, relatively
it's-
sizable one in order to
Yeah.
generate something like this.
And when we had long discussions with Mr. Harkins on Pecasset Reserve, 275 units, this issue never came up. Not once did this issue come up about having a site, a trailer on the site, or using, a particular unit that had already been built as a model unit or anything like that. So I'd get rid of the whole damn thing.
I get rid of the whole thing. I mean, is that a whole lot different than, realtors having an open house because your house is for sale?
Not really.
Like, isn't it?
And that's most likely what it's
Making a fuss about
gonna
something
be.
that is-
Right.
We had
it's not
multiple-
issue.
And the trailer is really, that's a building official thing. The building official has a right to say how long somebody gets to keep a temporary trailer on a piece of property.
And I have to imagine any major development is going to leverage an existing structure, just repurpose that for some finite amount of time to accomplish this particular use. Yeah, I would strike it.
Yeah, I had a problem with the adjacent. It sounds like we're talking about where it's not gonna be on the site itself, where the construction's taking place. And normally you would have thought that's where they would
And the
have put
same property, yeah.
on the same property, but when I read it the first time, I thought, well, maybe you're not, wouldn't even cover on the property. It would have to
So you
be
remember-
adjacent.
You remember when the Villages at Mount Hope Bay office was down next to Coastal Roasters?
Yep.
We had multiple construction trailers up at, when we were doing the power plant. I mean, and it's, you deal with the building official.
So, does
I think
everybody
get rid
agree
of
to
it.
just get rid of this?
I'm in favor.
Yes.
Okay, let's get rid of it and then go on to, we can always revisit any of these issues, by the way.
Right.
You know, what we're doing now is the first cut through. So that brings us down to D, and I'm thinking that we should get rid of D as well for this reason. We only allow drive-throughs for three different kinds or four different kinds of businesses, actually. Pharmacies and banks. And pharmacies and banks get them by right at the current time. They get a drive-through by right. The other two categories would be fast food or coffee shops. So it would be like a McDonald's or a coffee shop connected with Seasons, for example. And those require a special use permit, as we all know. But I don't think it belongs in this section. It doesn't belong in a section called office uses at all.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question?
So I think we should I definitely want to address the issue of drive-throughs because I have some strong views.
So, but how does a bank get one by right?
I just asked Todd the same question.
I don't
He's
see
looking.
where,
I
how do
don't,
we give, where in it here it says the bank gets one by right?
Would you say the bank or the pharmacy gets one by right?
because we
Both-
have two
both
different
banks.
categories here, one that
banks.
includes and one that doesn't.
They were all by special
And
use.
they're by special use only.
Yeah.
So-
So I think, I'm almost certain that banks and pharmacies get drive-through by right.
That's why.
By right where though? Like how?
I don't know.
I don't think so.
Assuming the property can accommodate it.
No.
I don't,
Well, I think that needs to be verified one way or the other.
Yeah.
I'm not aware of anything that automatically gives them a by right drive-through, because you actually have two lines here that separates banks with and banks without, and the banks with have to get a special use permit, or had to get a special use permit.
I think that's wrong. I think that needs to be legally investigated. But in any case, I don't think it belongs in this particular section.
But
I can say
my
I'm-
only concern about taking it out of this particular section is that as we Americans get lazier and lazier and like to get things.
More
without
things
just
are going
getting out
to
of
get
our
drive-throughs.
car, you know, more things are going that way. So right now on this page, maybe only banks, maybe only banks do that. But, I don't know, the next thing you know, if we don't say no, somebody's gonna open up something where you just can do a drive-through. So I think that better to be safe than sorry, because this could end up being like the crematorium thing where it sort of, sneaks up from behind you and you didn't know, that,
Well,
you
we
know.
did this a while ago, but we had a conversation about doing it this way and not taking every use that might have a drive-through and then breaking them down between two and just streamlining the table so that it was anything within that category. I feel like we must have done this to the other one too
Just by way
for
of example, now
retail.
admittedly CVS did it, and I'm not saying this wasn't a great service and all that, but think about what
Yeah, we
happened
did-
think about what happened with COVID, right, and the drive-through COVID tests. So, and yes, CVS already had a drive-through, so they were utilizing their drive-through, but you know, we've got in here what's to stop the medical office from saying, okay, well, now you can get, you know, drive-through flu tests, or drive-through COVID tests, or drive-through. I think it's worth, out of an abundance of caution, it's only one line. Keep
Well,
it.
we
and-
did the same thing in section 8. We added the line that basically said, any of the uses within this category, if you have a drive-through, we treat you differently.
Right.
And here's what you have, here's what you can do.
I'm personally for keeping it just out of an abundance of caution.
Okay,
Even though
I
I
completely disagree.
I just would hate
Yeah.
to see us like,
Right,
We
right,
missed something that we didn't
Right.
imagine.
yeah.
Yeah, we did it here too,
right.
in this one.
Right.
So for each of these, we added that line that if you have a drive-through, you're treated differently if you're within this category of uses.
Right, because otherwise you could have your drive-through medical cannabis store,
That's actually
right?
I'm pretty sure that's already happening places.
Yeah, and I'm not sure we want to have a drive-through of that.
I mean, it makes a distinction that anything that you have that qualifies in any of these categories, if you want to add a drive-through,
It's a thing.
it's a thing, and you're treated differently.
So can we go back to what those
Yes.
things are? And,
So this was only filled in on the form-based code by the zoning revision committee. We added the line, but we didn't go through all the zones. I mean, I can guess
Well,
what you're
that's gonna
do
be
here.
no
yeah,
across
those are
there.
gonna be no's.
Oops.
I think anything that's a drive-through should be a special use permit. That's just me.
Yeah, okay. S is, now, we haven't even talked about, well, I would put an S for the highway commercial.
Would-
A no for waterfront.
Yeah, I don't think you'd have
We don't
anything.
need that in waterfront. Industrial, a special use, and then, of course, an open space, no. So now we have to decide with the special use permit, what kind of specific and objective criteria. And
I certainly don't know anything about drive-through design, but I mean, I have to imagine something with traffic flow.
So usually there's a queuing standard, like you have to be able to queue so many cars
Sure.
on the property with like out blocking other parking spaces and driveway access. There's usually some kind of restriction for the board and the microphone system that has to be set back so many feet from like a residential, a residentially occupied building.
because of noise.
Yeah.
It's just
What
that,
So
else?
queuing, noise would be requirements.
is it just the drive-through
What do you spell
period,
queuing?
like,
QUE.
require a setback from a
ING,
residential
it
property?
feels wrong. I'm sorry.
Does the actual drive, part of the drive-through require a setback from a
You can re-
residential property?
You can require that.
I would have that. I wouldn't want to
Yeah.
live next door to like a driveway where
Okay.
there were cars idling all the time.
Okay, so-
Remember
so-
there was, when the CVS tried to put it in, they had a big to-do with the residents, with the neighbors. If you remember that.
Yep.
They went through, the neighbors were complaining, so they stopped the intercom system.
Sip and Dip was the same thing, but that was a hassle down
Was it?
at Bliss Four Corners, yeah, when they wanted that, because on the back side is so
Yeah.
close
Yep.
To a
to
resident.
the rear property line, that the people that were right there were within feet
Yeah.
of the
Plus,
light
the
shining
CVS.
in, there was a big buffering issue to change that.
And the turning radius too. We had a big one that was proposed on Stafford Road and William Canning's Boulevard. And that took a long time, and we finally said no.
Hours of operation.
Yeah, where the
I would
country
also suggest an
kitchen is.
increased,
Right
I would,
there.
I would, over what a normal, like, landscaping requirement or
Safety.
setback might be, from a regular commercial, you know, I would probably enhance the
The Dunkin'
setbacks if there's a
Donuts, huh?
drive-through.
Blissful Corners got accepted, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't either. Well, that's the problem, is trying to enforce queuing. They can provide so many spaces, but the Starbucks over at my Market Basket, I've seen them backed up, queued all the way out onto to William Canning Boulevard, sometimes in the morning. And so, yeah, you got a limit, you have a standard, but it's almost impossible to enforce the thing.
Well, sometimes the Dunkin' Donuts and Main Road gets so backed
Well-
up that you can't get in, if you wanna go to Tom's, you gotta go around the back way, because the whole driveway's completely blocked.
I had that happen to me one morning.
I've had that happen to me a bunch of times.
The-
I've just been trying to go to Tom's and I gotta go around.
The Dunkin' at Bliss Four Corners is another prime example of that.
That's a hazard.
Just awful.
There's times they really get, yeah.
I mean, you can't even pull in.
How that got,
So, but we're only talking about drive-throughs that are related to office uses.
Right,
Yep.
In this particular section. When we get to food, that's a different
that's a different thing.
kettle of fish.
Has anybody seen the queuing system they have at the Chick-fil-A in Fall River, where they have the two lines, and they have the people outside? with
It's
the-
incredibly efficient.
And the big.
They are super
I mean,
efficient.
that
It
is
amazing how
science.
fast
That isn't
they
even
move
art.
Cars through there.
Yeah.
There's two people out there, and they're taking orders from the people standing there and from the intercom system, and they're just pushing a massive amount of cars through
I
there.
don't know how they do it, but it's something.
All right, next
Okay,
section.
that gives you a lot of pretty good guidance, I think. Okay, restaurant. Okay, so now, including entertainment, not including entertainment. So let's see what we've got there.
Sorry, I just want to save this before something bad happens and.
Oh, yeah, no, save it, save it. Save.
Okay.
So if you take a look at restaurants, 1 and 2, 1 is not including entertainment. So that only has 2 special use permits under waterfront and industrial.
We turned the waterfront one to a P.
And we made that a P, or the zoning
Committee.
revision did. So let's go with a P, because, you know, that's where you want a restaurant, on the waterfront. And I would almost, you know, I don't know what kind of, you know, performance standards what kind of standards we would want for that permitted use.
We did parking, septic, and water. That's what I had. Might want to do.
Yeah, it would need water service and septic service, and it would also need adequate parking, which is gonna be handled in a
Right.
different
All,
way.
yeah, all three of those are pretty self-regulating, because we're
Yeah.
gonna have a parking,
Yeah.
updates to the parking ordinance, and
Yeah.
Size should be.
you have to have
Yeah.
water and sewer.
And of course, a restaurant would be governed by the size that we're gonna set on any building in the waterfront
Yeah.
district. I can't think of really anything else. How about industrial? If somebody wants, and there are industrial parks or business parks that have restaurants in them, in the neighborhood, actually. The one on Aquidneck Avenue over in Middletown, for
Doesn't-
example. So,
Longplex have something in it?
They do.
Yeah.
They do. They have a full restaurant.
A restaurant?
yeah, they have a couple.
In the PDP, it's permitted.
So, in industrial, should that be a special use, or should it be permitted by right? I think it should be a P. and whatever the appropriate performance standards would be, I'm not sure. Does everybody agree that it should be permitted in industrial?
Yeah,
This
Yeah,
is
I
a
don't see any
restaurant
issue with
without
that.
Entertainment.
yeah.
It's almost like an amenity, a service, you know.
Either that or
that's needed.
somebody could go over there and decide that they're gonna open a bakery and they wanna have a, you know.
A storefront.
They wanna have a breakfast thing, a
Yeah.
storefront with it, or, you know, somebody decides they're gonna, I don't know, I mean, think of that whole Hope and Main thing over in Warren and all those incubator things. Somebody could decide to put one over here and, you know.
Do you want performance standards, or is it just a permitted use in the industrial zone?
I'm almost thinking that this is an example, one of the rare examples where we don't even need performance standards.
I mean, as long as they have potable water and septic, which DOH is gonna handle if they're a food service.
Yep.
Okay.
Why not?
You know, and they'll have to abide by the standard parking. And of course, the industrial park itself has design standards and building design, so I just put it as a P.
All right,
So-
so now including entertainment.
So now, including entertainment, you still get it as an S in industrial though.
The color coding means it's
Oh,
gonna
sorry.
get changed.
Color means we will change it.
Color, don't pay attention to the letter, just the
Yes.
color, okay. Including entertainment. Now, entertainment covers a wide range of activities, from, you know, new dancing to somebody playing a guitar, you know.
But isn't
or
that
somebody-
adult entertainment?
But that would be adult entertainment.
Yeah, that would be adult, okay. So.
God, I hope so.
We're basically talking music here, so does anybody, so we have three S's. In general, commercial,
Waterfront and industrial.
waterfront and
And we
industrial.
made a P.
Why would we, so in the industrial, why would we make that a special use permit in industrial and not just a straight up permitted use?
Well, that's the question.
Well, I'm inclined to, I don't see a reason why in that particular zone, we would have,
Well, the only reason might be, this is the only reason I can think of, is that the size of the building that you can have in the industrial zone is a lot bigger than any place else. So you could end up with like a really big kind of nightclub place that you didn't have, just because the buildings there can be so much bigger.
Sure.
And the lot coverage is so much bigger. That would be my only thing, is that you could end up with like a really big like place.
Amphitheater or something like just thinking, it could be like, you could put next, if somebody wanted to, next to Longplex, they could put an amphitheater right there.
That wouldn't be, it wouldn't fall under this
It's not a
category.
restaurant.
has to be
I
a,
think-
The
But-
primary.
No, no, it's a
use
fair
is the
point, Trish.
restaurant. The entertainment
Yeah,
is an
it could end up
accessory
being a lot
to.
bigger, you know, a place that seats like, you know, 200 people and.
What about a
you know,
dinner theater?
A garden, a giant dance floor, and,
Yeah.
you know, you end up with like,
It's permitted in the PDP already.
oh, well, there you go.
yeah, but,
I know that's not all industrial, but
no, but the town, and I know that in the end, you can't stop anything, but the town also has to sell that land. So, like, if somebody came in and said, I'm building a rave bar, I wanna buy a piece of property in the industrial park to build a rave bar, you know, the council at least has the opportunity to say, I don't think so. But the rest of the industrial zone, you could buy a big industrial building and just turn it into like, you know. So I'd be inclined.
That's
to make
fair,
sense
okay,
there.
that's fair. I retract my,
So,
What
and-
what about a dinner theater?
Hmm?
Dinner theater, would that work?
Well, John would have to decide if that's a restaurant first or a theater first, and then it would either be under A2 or C.
Did
Yeah.
Stonebridge Inn have a dinner theater? Yes.
Does what?
Stonebridge Inn had a dinner theater.
But that's not there anymore.
Well, I understand that, but that's what we're talking about.
My assumption is like the spirit here is if it is an industrial area that abuts some sort of neighborhood, we just want to control sound, in essence, that's, or is it also?
I think it's just also that the police, with the usage
Yeah.
of the Tiverton PD, yep, we're opening a night, there's somebody bought an industrial building and it holds 500 people and they're gonna have,
Yeah,
you know,
it just,
food service, and they're gonna have a bar and a giant dance floor, and the police department may be going, oh, wait a second, hold on.
They're
a second
never gonna
here."
get water and sewer for 500
Well,
people.
we're probably not, but keep in mind that industrial zone does go all the way up to the border, so it gets a little different when you get up there.
okay, let's keep it as a special use permit.
Okay, so,
So including entertainment, we're keeping this as a special use in the I, and we want
Yeah.
the specific and objective criteria.
yeah. And that would be size of building.
Parking.
Yeah, I think like in the waterfront, you know, for example, the Boathouse now does weddings in the building. They have an entertainment license, it's a special use permit, but the town knows how big those weddings are, that they have enough parking for it, it's not a nuisance for the neighbors, you know, kind of thing, so.
Sound areas, sound.
Yes, exactly, so you're not, I mean, the zoning update committee decided to change it to a permitted use in the form-based code areas, but that was the committee's choice. And you have a little bit of the same issues that you have everywhere with an entertainment license, but.
Well, I think to your point, in the form-based code district, there's not nearly the concern for size,
Right.
because it's probably gonna be a
There's a building
reasonable
limit
sized building. There's also a limit to the size of the building,
Right.
and most of the lots are not big enough for a gigantic structure.
Right,
So I think the general agreement was,
right. And the council still has to give, the council still has
license.
to give the license, so the council still can like say hours of operation and, you know, yada, yada.
so what do you want for industrial, for specific and objective criteria?
Well, building size.
Yep, I have that one.
Capacity?
Size,
Same
parking.
thing.
How about hours of operation?
I mean, noise will get covered under the noise
noise
ordinance.
The
Parking
problem
under
is
parking.
enforcing the noise ordinance, but
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's all I can think of.
okay.
So,
And what about
so how about general, so we
general
also have a
commercial? Same.
General commercial, we have a special use there. And I think it is appropriate as a special use, and I think basically building size, hours of operation would be at least a place to start with specific and objective criteria. Be
And then I
interesting to
think
see what some other towns
the
have done.
we left this alone we left this as a special use in the
Yes.
waterfront.
Oh, I had it as a P. We did leave it as a special.
No, we left it as a special use. It's a P for the not including, but a special use for the
Right.
including.
Yeah. And again, I would say the same.
It's the same thing, it's hours of operation, it's the, you know, size of the area for entertainment, and this is a question, is the entertainment purely for, restaurant patrons, or will they be having private, you know, is there gonna be a separate function, private function area?
And what about outdoor entertainment?
Well, our
That's a-
ordinance,
Because you're on the waterfront
Our
and you might
ordinance-
have boats.
our ordinance does not allow outdoor entertainment.
Noise travels.
I know, but our ordinance does not allow outdoor entertainment except for twice a year at any given place.
One question, do we care if the entertainment is for the general restaurant or if it's for a wedding?
I think you wanna have a determination is, you know, is there a private function room Or is the entertainment for a private function room, or is it for the general?
Consumption.
Yeah,
Trying to think how to make that a specific and objective criteria, because it would have to be, you'd have to only allow it for one or the other. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, how do we regulate, unless you're gonna,
What would be the concern in, like, whether it's a private function room or
I guess not
the
really.
general,
I guess maybe really that's just covered under hours of operation, right?
yeah. I mean, that might be tough to
I
like,
think, and I only say that because, you know, there are a lot of, say you're a restaurant and you serve till 9, which is a pretty common thing, right? And so, and so by, you know, 10 o'clock or so, the place is starting to get pretty quiet. If you've got a separate function room and you're running functions there, then maybe your functions are going until 11, right? And then there's more noise at 11:30 when everybody's sort of going out and getting in their cars and
which should get sorted out with the license, right?
yeah, it should,
Yeah,
it should.
yeah,
So we good?
I think we're good.
Yeah, I think we're good.
Well, can I ask a question?
Sure.
If you have a tent next to your building and you put the outdoor entertainment in there,
That's outdoor.
that's
Our-
outdoor?
You can't do
our-
I mean, the entertainment in there, even
entertainment
though it's
ordinances-
connected to the building.
A
Our
tent doesn't
enter-
make you indoors.
No, it doesn't make you indoors. Our entertainment ordinances do not allow commercial outdoor entertainment. And you can have up to anybody, including a commercial thing, for a nonprofit, can have 2 a year, which is why you can have 2 sing out against hungers at Evelyn's, but you don't have outdoor entertainment the rest of the time. That's their outdoor entertainment ordinance. It's not in the zoning code, it's a regular ordinance.
Has that always been like that?
For
Because
as
when the
long as-
boathouse was first done, I could hear their music from my house.
Well, then that.
Because they just had those
Well,
It's not
flaps.
it wasn't
They weren't
enforced.
contained,
It-
and I could hear it all the way from Main Road.
It wasn't enforced. You're not allowed to have outdoor entertainment. And the noise ordinance says that the sound's not supposed to travel off of their property. So in theory, you could, if somebody was willing to enforce it, they could have gone down there and said, you gotta turn the volume down.
Okay, so that brings us to tavern or nightclub. I believe everybody's good with.
I've been waiting for like 4 meetings to ask this question. Can someone help explain for me why brewery and brew pub are on our uses not allowed in any district list?
Ashley can explain, because we were gonna put them there and then.
Water.
Water.
They use
Well, no,
so
that's
much
fair.
water. We actually, we had this conversation and I looked up the water usage.
Well, yeah,
and
yeah. I mean, it's
actually,
gargantuan.
I think we came to the conclusion that alcohol actually uses more water than beer, so they just didn't put it
So
in.
that was the sole reason.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because originally in the zoning update committee, we thought they sounded nice, so we were gonna add them, till we found out how much water they use, and then it was like, oh, no.
Okay. Then I will hold on any
And
further.
there's a whole field of treatment of water specifically for the production of alcohol, because it's unique
Mhm.
to manage the water.
Okay.
But these can be nice businesses.
Well, and that was my angle. I mean, water aside, this is a huge economic draw.
Oh, yeah, we
And
thought
a
it
lot of-
sounded
a
really
lot of
cool, we
people-
were all for it.
Yep.
Yep, a lot of people, there.
Yeah, everybody thought it was a great idea till we found out how much water they use.
Yeah.
Okay.
So maybe we could revisit that and think about it just from the water angle and see if there is any scenario where we could make it permitted, because it would be nice to have one in town,
Yeah.
frankly.
I mean, if when the study that
Yeah, yeah.
that Sampson finishes doing on the water resources and we know, then maybe we go, okay, well, you know, we could allow that could work. But
Sure.
that's why.
Okay.
Or if they bring in water, like I have to get my pool filled in a couple times in the summer if it's really hot and it doesn't rain, like 2 summers ago, they would do that, which is expensive. I mean, it's not cheap, but it would be some expensive beer, but that's okay.
Yeah, because you need portable water, drinkable.
Drinking water,
DOH
yeah.
standard water.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
So that brings us to tavern or nightclub, again, with adult entertainment or without adult entertainment. This is a different thing than restaurant. So the first category, without adult entertainment, we have a number of different special use permits for general commercial, the 3 form-based code districts, highway commercial, and industrial. How would you like to handle this?
I have a question before we
Sure.
get into this. Is a tavern or a nightclub classified by the fact that they do not serve food? Is that why they have these names?
They serve, this is something we should check into, but in the past, the town has interpreted it that because a tavern they have to serve some food, there has to be food available, but they can keep serving alcohol after the kitchen, like after the restaurant is closed. They can keep serving alcohol till whatever their closing time is, whether it's 1 or whatever, midnight or whenever it is. And I think the law is they have to have they have to keep having some bar food available. I don't think it has to be cooked, but I think you have to have like chips or whatever.
Yeah, the Department of
I
Health,
think DOH is, you have to have.
requires that you allow food to help, to help people absorb the alcohol.
Yeah, but
Sober
peanuts
up.
or
Yeah, to keep
or
sober.
goldfish or something.
It's
like
crazy,
that.
but,
Yeah.
It's something.
and again, they would have to get a license.
But we don't
from
really,
the state.
that's a good point, because we've had applicants come in front of us who say, we want to be a restaurant, and then they say they want to be open until 1, and then we say, no, you're a tavern, and they say, no, we're a restaurant. So we actually should make a definition, a real definition, so it's not confusing. But in the past, that's how it's been interpreted, is that basically they can stay open.
So we're classifying it by how late they stay open, right?
Well, we're classifying that they can serve alcohol after the regular dinner food is done.
Okay.
We don't have nightclub, we don't have a nightclub.
I don't think we need one, but.
We used to.
What do you consider Riptide?
Oh, is that a nightclub?
No, what do you consider Riptide?
No, it's a tavern.
We used to have nightclubs.
So what is your pleasure here? We have a bunch of special use permits that we need to dispense with.
That's not the same.
This is the alcoholic beverages
I understand.
chapter. I don't know what to tell you.
But does that automatically translate to zoning?
No,
Right.
no. But it's a starting point.
Yeah. No, I agree.
So what is the
The general laws.
I have another dumb question about this, and I know like it's nuanced, but let's say Boathouse was open until 1 a.m. and they serve food to 1 a.m. Does that make them a tavern, or are they still a restaurant?
I think we need to look at this a little more clearly and figure out, because, Todd is also looking at the general laws that have to do with the
Alcohol.
sale of alcohol, and it defines what a tavern is.
Does it
That-
also go by seating?
That, no. That doesn't directly correlate necessarily to zoning, but I think we need to do some research here, and distinguish that, because I'm aware of restaurants, and I'm not talking about specifically in Tiverton, but I'm aware of restaurants where you go and they're like, I'm sorry, our kitchen is closed, but you can go sit at the bar and have a drink. And I don't think that's a tavern or a nightclub, it's still primarily a restaurant, so we just need to look at this a little closer.
Would
Yeah,
be
I think
determined by
you
the,
need a
li-
definition
Yeah.
for it.
by the type of license they got from the council.
So let's go on to
I'm not
B2.
positive. I think we need to look at that.
And I'd also love to know like what the definition of a nightclub is too. And this might just be like I don't know, it just would be helpful to understand those contexts.
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to fully understand what those mean before you can decide how they're allowed or not allowed. And so we're gonna have to probably come back to this, and I'll have to bring you some more information on what distinguishes a restaurant, a tavern, and a nightclub from each other.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that in part comes from what the original state liquor licenses are.
Maybe.
So if you look at the state liquor licenses, there's a tavern license and there's a restaurant, and I think that in the zoning code is where that came from originally.
Maybe.
So
And
we
I
can
think-
pick up on the definitions then in the state code.
Yes, but it would be really good to have them truly defined, because
Yeah.
like I said.
Well, I mean, if you look to the general law on alcohol, it says a tavern means any house where the principal business is the furnishing of food and sleeping accommodations. I mean, that's not what we're talking about, so.
The term tavern just seems like a throwback.
It is, it's a little, it's an outdated term.
Yes, I mean, bar.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's
Yeah.
what, I mean,
We've
for
had taverns
us now,
since
what
1600s.
it's been like, and I was just saying, do you remember the way Little Bear was set up, where you had the restaurant part, and then you
Oh,
had
yeah.
that center room that where the bar was?
Yeah.
Like, they were considered a tavern, because they'd serve food till a certain point, and then the food would stop, but the bar would
Yeah.
stay open, and that's like how we've kind of decided what a
All
tavern
right,
is
so
versus.
we'll look into that and come back with
Restaurant
something.
does has a definition. It says an establishment that serves food and beverages primarily to persons seated within the building. This includes cafes, TVs, and outdoor cafes.
But like I was saying, if the boathouse was open till 1, and that was the only difference, would that transfer to a tavern?
I
Like,
don't-
Is there food and like,
I don't,
that's the question.
I don't
yeah.
think so, but we'll look into it.
So that brings us to 2. With adult entertainment, we only have one S, it's for highway commercial, and it already has a performance standard, which is not to be located within 1,000 feet of any church, school, daycare center, or residence. Our 2 highway commercial districts are very small, and they're probably within 1,000 feet of a residence.
Definitely.
Both of them, I think. Both the one up near the casino and the one
Probably.
at where 24 intersects with Fish.
You wanna talk
So
about that?
I would just say no. I would just say
Some of the
no, because
challenges.
I don't think that they could meet that performance standard.
Yeah, but you
So
have
just
to
get rid of
by
the
law.
S and say no.
But you can't. The state
It's-
says you can't outlaw, the
Wow.
state says that every town has to have some place where you can have.
It's a
adult
I mean, that's basically a de facto not permitted.
We had it up in the woods, up off of Williams.
What is it now? What's that, an open space now?
I didn't know what was going on in Tiverton like 40 years ago, because it sounds like it was a happy place.
The state mandated us to have an adult entertainment zone, and it was up in the woods.
What was?
Right up near the casino. There was a
Oh,
little
there was-
parcel up in the woods.
And what did they have there?
Adult entertainment,
They had
Oh, they just zoned it.
It was designated, and there was nothing.
because you can't prohibit it.
Right. That's
Yeah,
what-
no, I do recall that. Okay, so, but.
You should.
But I think we can leave it as a special use permit in highway commercial with that asterisk which sets the performance standard. And I don't think that anybody can meet that performance standard. So I think we're safe.
I'm not sure it works.
We'll just leave that one the
Unless
way
it's up
it
in the
is.
woods,
If somebody-
like-
Just
I
leave
mean,
it
I
the way
don't
it
think
is.
there's a lot of
I
design,
don't think you need to do
there's
anything more.
It's
a
at the
lot of
end
people-
of Quidnick Avenue in the woods.
So
In the
let's go to C,
I don't think Tiverton's
theater
like
or
that.
concert hall. A theater could be a movie theater, correct? Not necessarily live performances.
Well, what's the definition?
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't think we
Sue,
have-
do we have a definition
I'm looking,
for
I'm looking.
I don't think we have one.
theater?
And also, we have it as in, like, not permitted in industrial, and this goes back
Oh.
to my
No definition, okay. So
We don't have a
we've got
definition.
special use permits in village commercial, that should be probably
The whole,
no.
that whole line is gonna get changed
To
to
no.
no.
the whole column.
The whole
Yeah.
column, excuse me.
We'll
Yeah,
tackle
that
all.
whole column will be changed to a no, so that's already happened. General commercial,
I don't,
I think it's all
I don't
right.
think you've got the room in any of the general commercial zones to actually have anything like that.
Well,
So-
unless you turn one of the supermarkets into a theater, that
What's
size.
Yeah, no, but the supermarkets are not in general commercial.
I just want to mention too that I think, you know, we've used that criteria a couple of different times in the use table to not permit things, and I'll just say as a practice, I wouldn't rely on what you have zoned now as the district to make decisions about what you will and won't allow there. I would just try to look at the district as a zoning district. I don't want to tell you to ignore where it is on the ground, because you don't want to do that, but at the same time, you don't want to necessarily base what's permitted and not permitted
Yeah, no,
solely
that's a
on
good
the
point.
fact that you only have 2 parcels right now or 2 areas that are zoned, because as we know, that can change, and that's not within your hands, that's within the hands of the council. So don't limit how you're looking at these
That's a good
uses,
point. Yeah.
just by what you have zoned now.
I mean, if that's the case, then I don't see any reason why that wouldn't be a permitted use in general commercial.
I would tend to agree, that's the kind of thing you would see in a general commercial zone.
Yep.
And you may not have space for it now, but somebody may come in for a rezone and with that in mind, and they may get it from the council.
So if it's permitted, what would be the performance criteria?
Hours of operation,
Parking's already dealt with.
you know, I mean, you
What
could,
about sound there, like, depending on where it is?
well, there's noise ordinances
There's noise
in place that sort of
ordinance
blanket that. I mean, you would have, I mean, you might have building size, you know, capacity, that sort of thing,
Yeah.
footprint.
Yeah, I think you could just make it permitted in general commercial and light commercial and call it a day.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
did have a question why industrial we wouldn't permit it, or at least give it a special.
Oh, good.
And to give some context, the reason I'm thinking about this, and I can't remember the name of the place right now because I'm old and my brain hurts. But there's a kind of an industrial area, let's say in Bristol, and they have like a music venue, they have a pizza place, they have a microbrewery.
Yeah, that's where Pivotal is.
Yeah, Pivotal,
Yeah.
that's exactly the one I'm
Yep,
thinking.
brick
So-
pizza, yep, the whole 9 yards.
So why not permit it in industrial? With the same criteria? Does everybody agree with that? Hours of operation, building size? Anything else that Ashley's team can think of that would be appropriate? But I think it would be fine for industrial.
There was a, well,
Not waterfront, but industrial.
Great Wolf.
I don't know. I don't know. No, okay. I don't know. I'm just kind of thinking of the industrial park and whether or not, where we end up with the industrial park with all these uses, but maybe it's fine.
Should be a special
think
permit.
it's-
I'm having this exact conversation with another town, and they're back and forth. They have industrial 1 and industrial 2, you know, one more intense than the other. And the conversation that we're having is increasingly, you know, allowing commercial uses in their industrial 1 district because that's a less intense district. And the reality is, how much industry are we gonna have
Right.
anymore? So why limit our industrial districts from not being available for commercial space when that commercial space can be compatible with the intensity of industry that's allowed in the district?
I think it could be permitted, and ultimately it comes down to a business decision by whomever is, thinking of putting it in there. I mean,
Yep.
depending on what is already in the industrial zone, like, maybe it makes sense, maybe it would fit, maybe it doesn't, I think it's sort of like
And that's.
a real-time decision.
And that's the conversation that they're having, is kind of diversifying their industrial districts to allow some more commercial type uses that are compatible, because if we hang on to all of this and just hope that industry is coming, then we're probably gonna have vacant land and vacant buildings.
Well, like, if you use some of like Amazon's Nashville location, and even like the Hudson Yards, like, they have industrial space and then they have entertainment, because it's kind of like the European style, where like they have housing for young people who are coming out coding, they go and live in this housing, they go to work, and they have entertainment for them in a lot of these places. So that's might be where a lot of our industry is probably going, especially, so if we put that hat on, it works potentially as both, right?
Right.
They wanna-
Right, and that's the way, that is the conversation that we're having, that if we have these, like, say we have this strip of metal, buildings, it's in an industrial zone that fits in, they're bays, is there any reason why we wouldn't be okay with a restaurant or a pizza place going into one of those spaces? They're occupying it, they're paying taxes, they're providing a service to the industry that's around them, in addition to a service to the rest of the town. It keeps it viable, so they are moving in the direction of allowing certain types of commercial uses in light industry.
So here's the only question I have about it. And in theory, I don't have a problem with it, but is it something where you want a size limit? Is there, in other words, before somebody decides to come and build the next version of Great Woods in the industrial park, and the town's going, oh my God, like, that's not what we meant. Do we need to think about that?
Yeah.
Well, aren't we?
The building size and capacity, doesn't that cover it?
But especially, by putting a special use, you have more dialogue and you have more transparency for the whole town.
Right, but I think we should think about the size. I mean, just because
Sure.
a really, really big center takes up, I mean, maybe it generates a ton of tax revenue, so that's great, maybe you want it. But it probably eats up a ton of resources too. So I just think that that's a
I would
question
be
worth
more
asking.
comfortable with an S for it, like having special use, or is that what that would do? I feel like that would, to Rosemary's, instead of making blanket permit, I think we should.
So the green cells, we were gonna turn to permitted with performance standards. Do you want to keep those that way, or do you wanna make those orange cells, which would mean that they stay special use permit with specific and objective criteria?
At least for the I think it's the orange specific, or special use permits with specific, it gives us more latitude to have those
I think that
dialogues.
one's worth.
So VA, I don't think you were here for one of the workshops.
I apologize.
No, and that's fine. And it's my legal opinion that performance standards can be changed. They can be varied through a request for variance from the zoning board. Specific and objective criteria for a special use permit cannot be changed.
So once it says you need a 25-foot landscape buffer, if you can't produce one, you can't have a special use permit. So we're looking at this in like really 3 different kind of buckets. Is like permitted, it's permitted. Permitted with performance standards mean there are standards you have to meet, but there can be flexibility, and the board can negotiate with an applicant and say like, okay, you can't give us 25 feet, but you can accomplish the same thing through 20, and so we're okay with that. And then the special use permit with specific and objective criteria, if it says 25 feet and you can't give 25 feet, you can't have it.
Yeah.
It's rigid and it's not
The
flexible.
permitted actually gives us more flexibility.
The
is what you're
performance
saying.
standards give you more flexibility. So the idea is that we're trying to reserve, for the most part, special use permits for those uses that we want to be pretty rigid about and not provide a whole lot of flexibility.
that makes sense, so I'm fine with the green.
So those would be permitted with performance standards.
I think though that's a worthwhile, I think that's a question that's worth asking the council.
What's that?
Like if we were gonna permit a theater or a concert hall venue, do you have, is there a size limit that you would like us to stay with? Because that could be, I mean, you can build a really big place.
I think you just make your recommendation and the town council changes it when it approves, denies, or otherwise amends what you've done.
I suppose, but we'll have to come up with something. We're gonna have to come up with some occupancy number.
And once the train station's done, I think that this is where I think some of these things are gonna
Right.
become.
A problem or not a problem,
Or an opportunity,
An opportunity, that's it.
or an opportunity.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
an economic opportunity.
Exactly, but we don't know.
Yeah.
But we should go into it with our eyes wide open.
Sure.
Not-
I think we should go into it with a position that affords us the most flexibility and adaptability and ability to control to an outcome that's most desirable for the town.
So one thing you could do is you could tag these as permitted with performance standards with a threshold that over a certain size would require a special use permit.
Well, there you go.
Well, that's not a bad idea.
Way to find the middle ground there, Ashley.
That's my job. And let us look at average sizes and come back with a recommended size, and then you tell me if that feels right or wrong, and we can change the size.
Okay.
Are you talking about square foot or percentage
Percentage of what?
of the acreage?
No, I don't
lot
like,
size?
I don't want it, I think size is what makes sense, because then you can better determine impacts based on a size as opposed, because otherwise you'd have to take like the biggest lot in the district and figure out the percentage and what the size of the building could be, and I just feel like just setting a size limit is better.
And I think like capacity as well, because if you're, if you think about having some, I think that the capacity of how many people this could hold or whatever, I think that drives the vibe and resources that are
Right,
required to
the seat-
support
like the seat,
it.
what the seats are.
Yeah.
And those two things are very much tied together, because your fire code capacity is based on the size of the building
Yeah.
and the way the space is used inside.
Yeah.
We want people, but we want just enough, not too much.
Okay, so that I believe brings us to the last item E, and this is any of the above.
No, you skipped indoor.
Well-
There's no special.
Well, could I
uses there.
just ask a quick question on D?
Yeah.
Does Longplex qualify as indoor commercial recreation?
That is a legal question right now pending in the Newport Superior Court.
Thank you.
That I
Okay.
cannot
Wish
answer.
Somebody would define it, frankly.
So that's it, but to that point, the zoning update committee determined that indoor commercial recreation needs a real solid definition. And the only specific thing that so far the zoning update committee has been able to, for sure, agree on is that indoor gun and shooting ranges are not considered indoor recreation, that they're their
Yep.
own thing. But because of this pending decision in court, we've been a little reticent to try and tackle this, but
Sure.
everybody agrees that there needs to be a definition that defines indoor recreation, and that the potential current interpretation is way too broad, because that's basically anything. So, I don't know, Todd,
I'll tell you straight out, the zoning board was wrong, in my opinion, when it said shopping for books and clothes and shoes is an indoor recreational facility.
Yeah.
The zoning board knows I disagree with them, because on behalf of the town council, I appealed the decision.
and the zoning update committee agrees with you, We just don't know exactly. We've been trying to
We're-
find something.
And we're also kind of waiting because you should,
It doesn't matter what the court does if you define it here.
'Cause
It's
that'll-
prospective anyways.
okay. Wow,
But we've been
might be
looking
helpful
for,
to
we've been trying
understand
to find a
before we
definition
define
that
it.
we could steal from someplace.
I don't think we've come up with that.
We haven't found one yet that we like. The
Looking
only
like
thing that we,
Kingstown.
like I said, we
Okay.
have agreed
If
on
you have
is that
something, let me know.
indoor shooting ranges
I would completely agree
and
with that.
gun ranges are their own thing.
Yeah, but if you have those, if you have those uses separately identified anywhere,
Then they are.
somewhere, then they're automatically excluded from indoor
They're not
recreation.
identified anywhere separately. That's why we have.
No,
a
I
gun
thought
range on
we-
Main Road.
They're not in the prohibited list.
No.
That's why we have a gun range on Main Road, because just to show that people who don't learn from history tend to repeat it.
There's a lot of people in that category right now.
We have a gun range on Main Road because the argument was made successfully that because it wasn't identified anyplace else, that indoor gun ranges were
Yeah.
equal to indoor recreation, which was a
Yeah.
permitted use on Main Road.
Yeah.
And we didn't fix the definition then. So,
So should we do that now?
here we are. So we definitely, yeah, so indoor,
Shouldn't we move this to section 6 anyway?
Indoor commercial, yes.
Yeah, that's what I don't understand why it's even in there.
Because this used to be open recreation, nobody knew what that meant anyway,
And then you change it to.
and we just changed it to recreation. I just want to make sure that somewhere else we don't have,
I swear.
But
yeah, we don't. So that, I think that should be moved to section 6.
Well, I wonder, like, I think there's a couple things happening here, like this indoor commercial recreation also serves food, so now are there subsets of like indoor recreation?
That could be an accessory though. If you have an indoor soccer field
It's the,
with an accessory hot dog stand, like these skating rinks, right? They oftentimes have indoor food vendors. That's accessory to the primary use.
So interestingly, like, thinking of Long Clarkson, I think that's where this challenge lies, is like, I play soccer there
Mhm.
Wednesday. That is one thing, but sometimes you go there and there's no sports, and they're like, what is, are they,
We
is it?
can't consider it Longplex, not because it's a pending legal case, because it's just a mess.
Okay. So, well, my assumption is it's whatever you classify first, right? So if you're gonna say, hey, I'm classifying this as a restaurant and these other accessories come with it, so it's whatever, that would be the.
it's the primary use.
Okay, great.
So that does bring us to E, which is the drive-through service. And the only drive-through service in this whole category, this section, would be for the restaurant. And it looks like the zoning revision committee has decided that they want special use in 2 of the 3 form-based code districts.
all three, they're
So,
supposed to all be the
well,
same.
it was special in PFD, but it was not permitted in neighborhood business or traditional Main Street. But now, apparently, you folks want it.
That's because we've talked about combining it all into one zone.
Exactly, but do we really want, a coffee shop drive-through or McDonald's or Wendy's drive-through in any of those districts? I don't.
You already have it.
That would,
We already have 4, and those 4 are grandfathered in. They'll never go away. Do we want more? I don't think we do. I think it's inconsistent with the vision and the comprehensive community plan.
I don't want any chains, but you have those too.
Yeah, but do we want more?
no.
I don't think we do. So, highway commercial, maybe, but personally, I don't think they belong in the, first of all, some of those form-based code districts, particularly traditional Main Street, which is north of Judson, they don't have the room for a drive-through.
There are only, in the whole thing, there are really only a small number of lots that actually could, but they're all pretty much developed. And, you know, and I will say this as it is, the CVS backs up onto Main Road pretty regularly.
Yeah, but we're talking here just about food.
Well, no, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say CVS, I meant to say the
Dunkin' Donuts.
So, but, you know, let's not create a situation where we can have a problem. Let's nip the problem in the bud by, my recommendation would be to say, no. Everywhere in town, you know, now, I'm not talking about pharmacies, because that's a health issue, and it's a convenience for elderly people. You know, but, and the same with banks. That's a different kettle of fish. But donut shops and hamburger shops, you know, I don't think it's consistent with the comprehensive community plan, where we talk about the small town character, we talk about the, you know, the New England charm, we talk about the importance of visual quality. I think we are selling our heritage down the river.
We did that the first time we opened it up to chains.
Well, but, you know, now that we've got them, let's see if we can control them. So, I don't know, I'm not imposing my views on anybody, but, because the nice thing about our conversations has been that everybody gets a chance to say what they feel, so I'm gonna come right out and say what I feel. I don't think the damn things belong here.
I would tend to agree with you, Stu. I think it's just a practical matter of, like, logistically speaking, are there any parcels in any of those districts that could even fit that?
You could have a tear down of something that, you know, exists. It may not be barren right now, but we've seen a lot. And I mean, it's creeping.
There are definitely parcels that could be redeveloped, for sure, to have it. I'm gonna throw my lot behind Stu on this, although I think they should be allowed in highway commercial. Like, I don't, you know, wanna have it in highway commercial, especially up by the casino.
Yeah, no issue there.
Pardon?
Yeah, I would agree with you. No issue in highway
But
commercial.
I think that Main Road, those districts can live without it. I feel a little badly about making the ones that are there pre-existing non-conforming, but they're there, and as long as they keep going with it, then, you know, they're not gonna lose their right to do it. But I don't think that there are, I just don't think it's necessary. I think there's enough traffic problem on Main Road as it is,
Yep.
just in general. Between the school buses and the, you know, and a curb cut every 15 feet, because nobody ever really thought about the curb cuts when they all these parking lots.
Yep.
So I don't think it's, I'd be okay with making them no's for the food on Main Road.
And I will say that they could continue, they could be permitted as special use permits in highway commercial.
Yeah.
What about general commercial?
No. I'd be dead set against that.
We have so little general
I mean,
commercial.
we've got a general commercial lot at the corner of Sousa and Main that's, you know.
We also have general commercial down in the Stonebridge area, which is definitely not a place where you want that.
Yeah, yeah.
I agree with Stu. We don't need it. And if you get up by the casino, hell, if you go another quarter mile, there's, every time you turn around, there's a fast food place, there's plenty of drive-throughs to service the highway going by. I mean, there's no need, they need to do it on our side of the highway.
Okay, so not permitted in general commercial, not permitted in the form-based code, special use permit in highway commercial.
Yeah, so it would only be permitted in highway commercial with a special use
Yep.
permit. Okay, I think that's a good compromise.
I think we're all on the same page on that one too.
I would have even thought highway commercial, but you guys have been so reasonable,
I mean.
Think outside of the box.
Yeah.
Okay, so that brings us to section 9, service businesses. In the first category, personal convenience services, including but not limited to barbershop, beautician, shoe repair, tailor. And we don't have any S's in that category whatsoever, so we don't have to do anything. The next one is laundromat or dry cleaning facility that does not process on site. And it has 2 special use permits that we have to deal with in TM and traditional Main Street and neighborhood business.
Well, we have to reconcile.
Those are supposed to be Ps.
Those are Ps.
Yeah, because that's why it says that does not process on site, so those are.
So it's basically a storefront. It's a drop-off pickup.
Yeah, those are
Yeah,
supposed, those are.
exactly. Those can be Ps. Make both of those Ps. And I don't know that we, performance criteria for something like a laundromat or a dry cleaner that's just a drop-off pickup. I don't know.
Well, they're gonna be on, they're gonna be on Main Road in the form-based code district, so they're gonna have some design standards. and-
Oh, they're gonna have design standards.
So I think they're okay.
And they're gonna have parking, because that's gonna be standard for everybody. And they're gonna have lighting, and that's gonna be standard for everybody. I don't think they need performance standards beyond all of the things that they have already.
Yeah.
So that brings us down to mortuary or.
Yeah, before we move on from that, I didn't see a line for if they do process on site. We have if they don't process it on site, but what if they do?
I think we're gonna, I don't know if we did, but I thought we talked about putting them on the not permitted at all use because of the water and the chemicals.
The air pollution is a serious issue.
Yeah, I agree, but I mean, I didn't see a line where we even,
Yeah.
But we have in town right now, Bliss Four Corners has ones that process. I mean, I use it.
Processing there?
I'm sorry?
They're processing there?
Oh, yeah.
List for corners?
Yeah,
That's
no,
my dry
it's
cleaner.
someplace too. Yes, it's.
Really?
Where is that?
Yeah,
There's a dry
right next to the
cleaner.
barber shop, Duncan Center.
They're
Yeah.
in the plaza.
Yep.
I just thought it was a pickup.
Nope.
Really?
No. So just,
The remediation that had to be done next to Grand Central Market was pretty heavy because of that.
yeah, I mean, that has changed hands a number of times, but from an ownership perspective, but the use is still there.
Okay, so, Ashley, where are we?
Do you
Well,
want that?
do you want that on the prohibited list? or-
But what do you do with, I mean, is that a grandfathered? Yeah.
yeah,
It should be.
yeah, I would say put it on the prohibited list.
Your guy's not going anywhere, Bill. As long as they still operate there.
Wow.
Do we need to, is it dry clean or laundromat facility that processes on site?
I don't know, do we have a laundromat?
I mean, we don't have a laundromat, but we were just talking that, given the water use,
I thought we had crossed laundromat out because of the water.
I think we might have because of the water.
Yeah.
laundromat might need to go on, at least for now, until we get a handle on the water situation.
Yeah.
Okay? Okay, Ashley, you can go back, I think, to. So there's, so the next one would be C, specialty services including but not limited to, but we don't have any S's in that whole column, or that row. So that brings us down to mortuary or funeral home, and it looks like we've gotten rid of the special use permits and gone to no for everything. I don't know who did that, maybe it was the
The
zoning
revision committee.
Vision committee.
So that brings us down to E, electronic or appliance repair shop. We have a special use permit in the VC, no, that's N, in the R8.
No, it's right here.
VC.
But those are all getting changed, or
Yeah,
all
that's right.
already
They're-
were changed.
They all are N. So that's it. That's it for that category E. So category F is veterinary office or animal hospital. And here we have special use permits for the R40, 60, and 80, which makes sense to me. And it looks like they were changed to permitted by the zoning revision. So does everybody agree that we should have the possibility of a veterinary office or an animal hospital in R40, 60, and 80 with a special use permit?
Yes, and one of the
Yeah.
criteria for the special use permit is gonna have to be water. Because that's.
Again, a lot of heavy water use.
How-
Um,
You're gonna have to help me with that. I
Yeah.
mean,
So,
how do I write the specific and objective criteria for water use?
so we should try and find out what they need for gallons a minute for a well.
Could I just, I don't see it on here, and since we're talking about animals, what about groomers?
That's a separate definition.
I think that was, isn't that like doesn't that go with like personal services, like the barber shop and all that? Isn't that in that category?
Yeah, and I know the definition is different because I worked on that definition. So.
There is a definition for
I don't
that?
see the use though. I don't see a line for that.
I don't know.
I don't think of groomers as agricultural. I think that's a,
No.
No,
that's
a
a,
service
Retail.
business.
yeah.
Regarding the veterinary offices and the water, my assumption is, and I don't know if this would go in the special use criteria, is, one is there's probably to not put a burden on any well or system, there would be a capacity of any animals they board because of whatever reason, and then the other driver of water is surgeries for that, is my assumption. Is that what you were?
Yes, but so is cleaning, clean.
Basically,
just
yeah, so there might be a
cleaning cages and
capacity.
stuff like that is
Yeah.
there's a,
That's a concern, and also, the outdoor exercising of animals, is always an issue. So we would want to put some kind of a limit on that if it's in, if it borders on a residential, well, it's in a residential neighborhood.
And Stu, is that because of potential parking?
Yeah, and also, aggressive animals that might, threaten little kids next door. But usually they're on a leash.
Yeah.
But we would want to put, I don't know. what
Well,
kind of-
there need to be fencing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There would be fencing, and,
Are you, excuse me,
leashing. There's a leash law in Tiverton already. But the animals have to be exercised, and you have to exercise them outside.
But they, almost all of them, for liability purposes, have a fenced run, like, because they don't wanna be responsible because they lost somebody's dog on the
The
leash.
people that are exercising these animals are gonna be way more careful than the neighbors who would just open their door and let their
Right.
dog
Yeah.
out. So I mean, we can put the requirements in there, but
Yeah, I think for that one, I think we gotta try and figure out, we should look and see what DEM has for a wastewater amount, because that'll give you an idea of a water amount, and put a limit on that, like, you know, so that you're not gonna end up with you can basically limit it to a size, right? Because DEM has to have some criteria for that, I'm sure they do. Because you can't build a giant animal hospital and run it off a well in South Tiverton, it's not
Right.
gonna work, like, there's just not gonna be enough water.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like patient capacity or,
I think it's probably capacity. I mean, in some situations, it's potentially, if they, and at this stage, they probably don't even need to do surgery just to do basic care. That might also be the number of surgeries that would impact water,
maybe.
or if they're doing
So
surgeries.
we don't have an answer, so we're gonna have to look into that.
Yeah, let's,
are you changing it to accommodate the existing veterinary hospital? Which is in a residential zone now that never got a special use? Can we just say no?
well, they're grandfathered in.
They're grandfathered in, but now you're
I also
opening it up.
think, but I also think, I mean, this is a pretty dog and pet friendly town.
It's a lucrative business, yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's not that lucrative
It's that there's not
anymore.
there's not enough vets right now for the animals
Exactly.
That exist,
that
right?
exist, and nobody wants to work there. People want to work, but I don't wanna say this, the baby boomers who ran vet, they worked very hard, the new generation, they're doing 8 and skate. So I don't wanna say that's not
I
hard, that's
agree.
work-life balance, and that's what we should be doing. So I don't know if economically it's that lucrative here, but I know people need it.
We also have to protect our blue gold water.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see if we can get through this whole category, this section, and then we have a little bit of other business. We want to approve the minutes, I think. We have 3 sets of them. And then we can maybe get out of here by 9:30 or so. So let's go down to general automotive repair shop. We have special use permits that would apply in general commercial, highway commercial, and industrial. Is everybody comfortable with that? We made them non-permitted uses, or somebody did, I think the zoning revision committee did, in the 3 form-based code districts, which is appropriate. We don't need them there. But if there's special use in general commercial, highway commercial, or industrial, what would be the specific and objective criteria? Certainly hours of operation. They would,
I think there's health and safety.
we would probably want to make sure that there is a limit to how close they can be to a residential neighborhood.
Could I ask a definition question here? Do we include restoration under the umbrella of repair? Do we draw a distinction there?
Because we did all these, we did all of these definitions because we thought they were confusing, so there's new ones. Hang on a second. Automobile, hang on, I'm getting there. By the way, I was just looking at the DEM's thing. They estimate 200 gallons a day per veterinarian. That's how you do it, per veterinarian. And a kennel, for every kennel that you have, it's another 10 gallons a day per kennel. And a pet grooming place is 500 gallons a day per station.
Yeah, that's heavy.
That's a
Yeah.
lot of water.
So getting back
I'm
to,
going back to, I'm looking for this automobile thing, Stu.
okay,
because-
well,
It's a
Well, you
business
do
where motor
that.
vehicles are repaired and otherwise serviced in an indoor venue by mechanics, technicians.
right.
Repairs may involve engines, carburetors, brakes, transmissions, muffler systems, electrical systems, auto body, and general running gear. Motor vehicle repair garage shop includes auto body repair shops and used car dealerships.
Yeah,
We'd need to control fluids.
So another issue would be the storage of vehicles or the parking of vehicles outside. That's a huge issue with Durant on Main Road already now. So, and then Dick, you mentioned,
Fluids, they need a way to contain that. That became a big, that guy that was recycling automobiles up on Boga Marsh,
yeah,
where he was tearing them apart and, ripping burnable. But he had to be able to drain every bit of and he had to control it with basically pans and things that kept it from getting into the ground and into the groundwater. But over the course of a day, they take in a lot of that
storage.
used oil and things
Yes.
during that repair.
And I don't know if this is further into that, but like, how do they get rid of disposal of that stuff, right? Like, it's not gonna stay there.
Well, there are state and federal laws that govern that.
So picking up on this discussion, do we cover auto part / junkyards anywhere?
Yes, we do have another
Yeah.
definition, I remember that coming up.
Motor vehicle salvage recycling?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
A business that acquires damaged, disabled, or abandoned motor vehicles which are then dismantled for spare parts or scrap metal.
But where is that located in this use table?
It's a new definition.
What section would it come into?
Sounds like a services.
Service, I would think.
Service business?
So it probably needs to get added.
I mean, not that anyone's opening up a junkyard, But we do-
junkyards are specifically prohibited use now, Ashley, I believe.
They
but,
are.
but
But he's
I shouldn't
talking
use the
about
term
something
junkyard. I mean, there are auto part salvaging, like, there's one on King Road. We got Tiverton Auto. We got, we just had the fire
Yeah, right.
a quarter mile down from my house, you know.
Well, in the past, we have considered those junkyards, and they're not allowed, except for the ones that are grandfathered.
Yeah.
So the question is, do we want?
Do we even need it, or is it just a non-permitted use?
Do we just want to say? it's
I would
not-
just put it on a non-permitted use.
It's it goes on the non-permitted use, we're just gonna define it more specifically, right? Because right now, we say they're junkyards and they're not permitted. But we
So
could.
you have this general open lot storage prohibition.
Well, I mean, I think.
You have junkyard or storage of unregistered vehicles
And-
as prohibited.
Yeah, right
Yeah,
here,
that's prohibited.
above that.
Oh, there you go. All right, so,
So
we already got it
that's
covered.
already a prohibited use.
okay.
But like Tiverton Auto Parts, when they started wanting to sell cars, they used up all of their allotted parking spaces to put cars for sale and kind of took over the state land across the street,
Yeah.
which blocked your view for a long time. There were times you couldn't see around them if they had a tow truck or something parked in that land. And I don't know how you stop that kind of creep where they're actually going through a change of use or taking up adjacent property that's not even part of their lot.
Okay.
We should, just as a note, and I'm thinking about this, it's a service business, is we should put pet grooming on there
Yeah.
as a separate thing.
It's good. My assumption is except for the one that's, we're not gonna.
Not allowed anywhere, huh?
Well, either that or we
I'm taking
limit
an
them
educated
to-
guess.
Well, we do have one in town today. We have 2 in town.
Do you want them, I know what you want to do in residential. What do you want to do across the rest of these?
Well, it's,
We do have one in general commercial.
right,
Yep.
I mean, it's 500 gallons a day. I think for sure you only want to have it where you have public water, because you're not gonna like
Correct.
run that off a well.
Yep.
So that
And-
means it's probably only gonna be either on Main Road or general commercial or
Well-
an industrial park.
And both are on Main Road.
Yep, and I think you have to decide how many, you set the size by stations. At 500 gallons, it's 500 gallons a station. I think the ones that we have are pretty small, right?
They
It's
are.
like
Yep.
one station, so.
Well,
you could-
the one in North Tiverton has multiple I think there's like maybe
There's like
3.
3 or 4.
Yeah. The one across
At a
from
time.
Coastal. Well, I think it depends on volume. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know how they run their business.
The roasters, well, they have public water there, right? Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I think, I don't know what the number is, but I think you set a limit to the number of stations, because that controls the amount of water.
Mhm.
All right, what about in the form-based code?
Well, that's where we have one.
I think you allow them in the form,
Yeah.
I think you allow it
Special
in the
With-
form-based
use or
Special
permitted?
use, right?
I think
you
it's-
Permitted with the.
With the performance of the
Can
the
you
water.
set a number of stations?
If you're feeling strict on the number of stations, then I would make it a special use permit with a limit on the number of stations, because then it's not a movable
But-
object anymore.
Then I would make it a special use permit with some number of,
And you'll have to balance the size
500 gallons per station.
with the water usage.
say that again?
I mean, you'll have to balance the size with the water usage, right? Like, I mean, someone buys, I don't know, just hypothetical, like, it's this big, right? And it could accommodate, just based on square footage, I'm making it up, 8, right? And you're gonna limit that to 4 because of the water, like,
Yeah, so maybe you stay, I mean, it's just, how many, I can't remember how, do you know, can you remember how many gallons the, power plant fills up at night? I'm gonna find out. The power plant is our biggest user, and they have to fill their tanks at night, because if they try and do it during the day, they dewater the system. But they put a lot of gallons in, so.
About 3,000.
I'll make a point of finding out, and then we'll pick some number of stations to limit that to, right?
Yeah.
Well, if you were saying that it's 500, I think you said it was 500 per station,
Yeah.
per rumor.
Yeah.
So that's, if you have 2, that's 1,000 per
Gallons a
day. I think 4 is a lot. I think you're looking at 2 or 3 stations.
yeah, I'm not denying it.
We're not
I mean,
gonna change
yeah.
the ones that are there,
Yeah.
we're just gonna not have, you know,
I don't think any of them have.
like
more
with
than
one
2
of
or
those
3 people
giant,
working at a
you
time.
know,
Yeah, I agree.
You know?
like that place over in Middletown, which is awesome.
But we have to do a little more research.
Yeah, but we have to come up with do a little more research.
Your place in
Okay.
Middletown.
So that, I believe, brings us to vehicle rental agency. Am I correct about
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So we have 2 special use permits now. 2 were changed to N already, but 2 survive, and that's for general commercial and highway commercial. So again, the issue here is outdoor storage, probably hours of operation, because those guys stay open all night sometimes, don't they?
Is this staying as a special use?
So if we want to keep them as a special use, I suppose the 2 places would be general commercial and highway commercial. But I think that, but there are some issues with rental agencies. People are coming and going all hours, so we would want to address that issue. And also vehicle storage outdoor vehicle storage would be an issue. Can anybody think of anything else?
Typically off airport, they aren't open 24 hours a day, so like if you think about the one that's over by the Dartmouth Mall, it's a Hertz. You can only pick up and drop off within, I think, like between 7 and 9.
Yeah.
So I think you can put that in there. The other thing is water, 'cause they need water to clean those cars.
They're cleaning the cars all the time.
You have the
I'm less worried about them coming and
I'd
going.
leave them as special use permits in those 2 districts, but hours of operation, water would be a concern. We'd have to look into that a little bit. Make sure that those districts have water and sewer.
And car capacity, I think to your point, this.
And then we would want to put a limit on how many, what kind of outdoor storage of cars, because they have to, I'm not really, it's a legitimate business, and so certainly in highway commercial, but general commercial,
You have your lighting ordinance anyhow.
yeah. And I think that where general commercial certainly is concerned, we might want to also make sure that that there is some distance between the operation and a residential neighborhood.
So I have a question for you. Why would, like, my gut would be, I guess S is fine, but like, would we want to allow it in the industrial area? That says no.
I don't see that anybody is gonna, like, this is not, I can't imagine anybody opening a car rental business in Tiverton. Like, we're not close to the airport, we're not, I mean, I don't know. I think I just make them permitted in the highway commercial because it's the only thing that might even be remotely close to the commuter rail station from Fall River, and then just say no every place else. Because where is somebody gonna put one of these things? And why? I mean, this is, I mean,
We're not a train hub.
we're not any kind of transportation.
Change the S to no in general commercial.
And just say that you can have one up in highway commercial.
And then in highway commercial, it is a permitted use.
So
but-
we're getting
but
rid of
with-
these?
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be an N in general commercial, it's going to be permitted in highway commercial, but the performance standards there would be the same as the ones we've already mentioned.
All right, so this is a P.
No, that's an
No,
N.
that's an N.
That's an
N.
N.
Sorry, that's what I meant.
And highway commercial is a P.
It's a P.
With the performance standards we've already mentioned. So that brings us down to self-service car wash. We have only one of them, I think, in town.
We don't have any of them.
No, we don't, but we do have, my question was going to be, what's a non-self-service car wash? Because we have Three Ducks, or
We have,
That's
what
not-
was formerly known
that's
as
not
Three Ducks.
Self-service.
No, yeah.
There's somebody that's there and they put you
Which is
on.
why I'm asking, we don't have that category.
Right, right.
So let's just say no to everything in that category because we don't have it. We don't have a definition for self-service car wash. And it's a big, what is it?
Water,
Yeah, I think
chemicals.
put that on the prohibited list.
Yeah.
We don't have enough water to be like doing that.
I'll just put it on the prohibited list, yeah.
So we're taking
So it
this
goes
whole
away as
line
a-
out.
That whole line goes away and it becomes a prohibited use.
Yeah, everything that we take the whole line away, you're gonna make automatically a prohibited use, right, Ashley? Did you get the rest of the list of the prohibited uses that were attached to the table that I, the definitions I sent you?
I'll have to look.
At the bottom of that definitions thing is a whole bunch of like
All right, I'll update
random
this.
things.
Are we saying self-service or are we just saying car wash?
No, self-service, just self-service. Car wash.
So yeah, we got a bunch of things, super bars, straight across all terrain.
All right, I will add that.
Payday loan shops, quad shops.
Hey, Ashley, when's the last time you saved?
Now.
She's doing okay.
I did not that long ago.
I don't want to jinx.
I'll
I get
do
nervous.
it again.
Without autosave on, I get. But we do need to add a category for non
We're
So-
almost.
self-service car washes, though.
We're almost finished with this service business category. So we have commercial dock or pier, but we don't have any S's in that whole line.
Right.
So we can forget about that.
What about private docks?
We haven't, I don't, we can't regulate a private dock, that's CRMC.
That's not a service business.
Well, you know, the problem with Nanaquacket had always been, the houses are up on the hill, they trim those lawns, and even though they're not supposed to, or using, you know, fertilizer and trimming those, they've cut the vegetative buffer all the way down the walk. And then they want to put in as soon as they put in a pier, then they post it because of the possible, based on the possible liability, somebody walking along the shoreline there. And that's all salt water. I mean, it's not only up at the bridge do we have a water district, a waterfront district, but, you know, we don't say anything about anybody building a pier there, one thing or another, or if there should be any restrictions.
Yeah.
So I don't think we can
Huh?
regulate that.
I don't follow.
Yeah.
That's something, when we take a closer look at the waterfront district, we should consider that, but I'm not sure we can,
It's a,
I don't, you know, because I think that between CRMC and DEM, there's not much we can do.
it's class
And then-
one water in there too.
And then you'll have riparian rights that go back to colonial times.
Dick, are you talking about on my private property putting a dock?
Yeah,
Yeah, they do.
That's an
Evelyn?
accessory.
because you can get out to the Secundit
That would be
River.
accessory to the residential use, and like Stu said, that's gonna be governed by CRMC and DEM anyways.
We don't have any authority.
So let's take a look at the
like putting a
final
pool in.
one, and then we're gonna wrap this up. Storage, repair, and sales of boats and marine accessories. And here we only have 3 S's to deal with, one in general commercial, one in waterfront, and one in industrial. We, you know, the obvious example is Don's Marine. A huge amount of boat storage is involved. I don't think it's a good use for general commercial. I would change that S in general commercial to an N, I mean, that's just my personal view, because, you know, I just don't see it as a good general commercial use. It's too, you know, usually they want to be on the waterfront. They don't have to be all the time, but they require a lot of land. You know, while we're thinking about that, also think about waterfront. That is a good place, obviously, for boats and marine accessories. I would tend to leave that as a special use permit with objective and specific criteria. And that would have a lot to do with, I think, outdoor boat storage.
Who-
Yeah, but what are you
Is
gonna
the-
say, like, you can't have it there, or, you know, I mean, if we want somebody to build them.
We need to limit it, I think.
Yeah, but if you want somebody to build a marina, and you're gonna tell them that they can't store boats in the wintertime, they're not gonna build a marina, because that's a huge part of their revenue stream.
But this
It's
is not a
accessory to
marina.
a
This
marina.
is
What?
different.
That's accessory to marina.
Yeah, this is not a marina, this is not a marina, this is a completely different business. This is Don's Marine.
Yeah, but Don's Marine is a marina.
I don't think it's a marina, I think it's
Sales.
a boat sales.
Sales,
I think it's entirely sales and repair.
Okay, all right.
sales and storage.
They don't sell gas, they don't
That's true.
provide moorings, they
Okay,
don't
yeah,
provide slips.
Yeah, good point, okay.
So, you know, I would make it a non-permitted use in general commercial.
Is everyone in agreement with that?
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I would keep it as a special use in both waterfront and industrial. Does everybody agree with that, or would you rather go with P?
Well, you have that split cell, does that means that the zoning
Committee already, yes.
I forget what the orange means, but,
It's a special use permit with
Okay.
specific and objective.
okay, so we're consistent there.
Yeah, we had size and screening.
Yeah,
So we would, merge these.
screening.
Screening of the boats.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is a special use in both?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would make it a special use in both. I think it's a great use in the industrial park. I'd almost make it a permitted use in the industrial park. I'd rather see that than
Then,
biodiesel.
Yeah, you can
then we
make
should
it-
do that, if
Yeah.
others feel similarly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have any, yeah.
Is that industrial only? Or are we talking about both?
Just industrial.
No, just industrial.
So it would be special in waterfront, but permitted in industrial. But there we would have to have some, again, like Sue just mentioned, I think screening it is an important issue.
In the industrial park?
Yeah. No, in the industrial zone. Remember, we're talking
Oh, in the
about,
industrial zone?
we're talking about the entire industrial zone.
I don't know, I mean, look at the industrial zone, it's an industrial zone, it's not.
Yeah, but you have residences across the street from the industrial zone.
Yeah.
The buffer, yeah. Look at the stuff you've got up near the solar farm off of Eagleville Road there now. There's boats in there too.
Yep. Right.
Solar farm on Eagleville.
Right.
Well, I
Now, we
mean,
want to, and we're talking about cleaning up the industrial a little bit, the definition of industrial, to go with more of a light industrial than a heavy industrial. I don't know.
the only problem with trying to make somebody screen that is, is that once you get a boat up on poppets, it's pretty tall. So, trying to screen that is, what are you gonna screen it with? You're gonna make them buy 150-foot arborvitae?
A boat with a fly bridge,
Yeah, exactly.
forget it.
Like, trying to say somebody's gotta screen that is, it's almost.
It's impractical.
But it is a very lucrative business, and it is a business that's in really short supply right now. I mean, it's unbelievable, the shortage of storage, particularly indoor storage. But, you know, I mean, you could make indoor storage a by right and outdoor storage by special use permit, I guess. Maybe.
Well, but consider this, consider what the storage buildings look like. You know, consider what now it's called Safe Harbor, but the marina over on the hummocks in Portsmouth.
Used to be Pirate Cove.
But, not Pirate Cove, but I'm thinking of the one further north,
Brewers?
Brewers.
Oh.
They put in 2 or 3 storage that are absolutely enormous, and I think so high that you can actually put a sailboat in there with its mast stepped, because everybody wants to keep the mast stepped all winter long. I don't know if you do that with your boat.
No, the mask comes down.
And they store it, and those things are an eyesore, and there are industrial zones in North Tiverton that we don't want to do that to. I don't want
Building
to.
height regulations though as well, don't forget.
There is building height rate. I mean, the question though is, I mean, it is an industrial zone, and I mean, most of the buildings that are up in the industrial zone now are metal buildings. That's what everybody builds in the industrial zone. So, I mean, you could, we have a height limit, I don't know, I just think that, you know, if we're trying to generate more tax revenue here from other than residential property taxes, and we're saying that we'd like to help, you know, get some more things going in the industrial zone. I mean, I would be okay in the industrial zone with saying, I don't think you're gonna be able to completely screen it, but you could, you know, you could require a landscape buffer in the front. It's not gonna completely hide the things, but at least you could require that if they're gonna have outdoor storage, they have some sort of like.
But to that point, like, is our concern, like, nobody looks at a boat outdoor storage and thinks it's hideous. I think where we might be worrying about this issue is if they're salvaging boats, right? If it becomes an eyesore, or do we genuinely think if boats are outside in that like, what's the spirit of the issue?
Aesthetics.
Well, the issue on Riverside Drive, where boats are stored, sailboats are stored up on Humphreys Wharf on Riverside Drive, with their masts up all winter. The halyard whips against the metal mast, and you get a wicked noise all winter when the wind's up. And you know, and that's a big issue. People complain about that's one thing. So you know, and I'd be a little concerned if, well, but I'm. But when it comes to industrial, when it comes to the industrial zone, I'll be flexible.
I think security, screening, yes, if it's near a residential, but
Right, that's where you said for waterfront.
I think, yeah, but I think that security is very important with these boats and everything too.
Yeah.
So chain link fence or something,
Yeah.
because of our resources with police going down there all the time.
Well, yeah, but then that, yeah. Also, you've got the view shed issue. If people are building right on the waterfront, and suddenly you're used to this nice view you used to have, and now you're looking at a metal warehouse.
I absolutely understand what you're saying, and I think
So-
there's some considerations from a sound and a visual standpoint.
So I think we have to wrap it up. It's after 9:30. I think we have to wrap this section up because I think we still want to approve the 3 sets of minutes that we have. And so I'm going to ask,
Can I just
And that's
ask you
all
though
we'll
to
do.
resolve this last piece of this section? Because I don't not, we had a lot of conversation, but I'm not sure what you're doing.
so I think,
Right now, I have a special use in the waterfront, and I'll need some specific and objective criteria, and then I have a permitted with performance standards in industrial, and I'll need an idea on what you want to do with performance standards if we're keeping those that way.
Can we make a standard to that point? Do the masts have to be down or have a height restriction or a noise restriction for these uses? Is that like a thing we can do?
Yeah.
For storage,
Yeah. Well, we already have a height restriction on all buildings.
but that's not a building.
Yeah.
Right, but keep in mind, are we gonna say, because we have two kinds that, we have marinas, right? That's it, which is another use we haven't even gotten to. Are we gonna say that marinas can't have outdoor storage and they can't have a building? That's a,
building has a height restriction.
I'm asking
Yeah.
that question, right?
Yeah,
So
but
are
we have to be really careful where we're gonna permit that.
So, in the interest of time, do we sort of put a pin in this, bookmark the fact that we need to come back
We
to
need to-
line item K?
I don't know how other communities would handle that are, I'm thinking of, communities like, Narragansett or Jamestown, that have all of, that have lots and lots of waterfront and lots of recreational boating.
So I can-
But they must handle it in a way that would not,
I can tell you right now that Jamestown has got boat storage everywhere. I mean, a lot of communities that want marinas and want that business, understand that the winter boat storage thing and, the service repair thing is a big part of that business. And so they, and people who have boats and like boats and want to live in a boating community say this is just like what comes from the territory if you want to have marinas. And if you want to have these, these waterfront facilities, you want to have docks and ships and everything, like, this is how these guys stay alive, is they get storage money in the wintertime.
Yeah.
okay, I will do some homework on that, and before we meet again, and then come back with something written on paper. I'll research some other communities to see what we can do, but,
Can we just also make a note, we need to discuss marinas, and we still need to discuss non-self-service car washes
Yes.
yep.
in this
okay.
category.
Okay. Okay, so, so we have three sets of minutes for February 6, February 17, and February 24. February 6 was our regular monthly meeting. So does anybody have any corrections, any typos that they would like to call attention to? If no one does, then I will make a recommendation, I will make a motion to approve the minutes of February 6, 2024.
Second.
We have a second, I think, from Tricia. Do we have any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous. So, February 17 was a special meeting, and it was done by Todd. Thank you, Todd. It was very good. I didn't see any problems here at all. I'll make a motion to approve those minutes.
Second.
Do we have,
We have a motion, we have a second. Now we have a discussion.
oh, sorry. Do we have to, on a workshop, it was not my understanding we don't have to approve the workshop notes.
You don't have to, but we're going to, as a
All right.
better practice, to get them up on the Secretary of State's website.
Oh, fine.
Because that's what this town wants.
Okay?
I
don't
mean, if
disagree.
you're going, in the past, we never
Well, we're moving
approved.
forward.
So we have a motion, a second. We've had a discussion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, those in favor? Okay, and then the third set of minutes is, again, one of our workshops on February 24. And Ed did this. Thank you, Ed. I didn't see any issues on this one. I'll make a motion to approve these, the minutes for February 24, 2024. Again, a special meeting, a workshop. And I think Dick just seconded that. Discussion. Hearing no discussion, those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. Now, we need to think about we're pretty close to the end of this. We could probably finish this in one more session. Can we, would anybody like to do a workshop on a Saturday morning sometime during the month of March? We don't know what what the regular monthly meeting in April is going to entail, but I think we're going to have to,
What's the deadline?
I think in April, you're going to have a pre-application for 331 Main Road. That's the church there. They're going to be looking to convert that. Have commercial on the first floor and I believe 4 residential units on the second floor.
yeah,
It's a pre-application.
yeah, so, but we don't know, I mean,
So we might have 2 pre-apps.
So maybe we should just find a day in March and power through this, get it done.
I would urge my colleagues to do one more Saturday morning workshop, and I think we can just about get finished with it. And then, because I think we are gonna start getting hit with things. Because we've got a bunch of things out there that are hanging, and they could come back any minute, like, well, we were talking about it the other day with Ed. So everybody get their calendar out and see if what Saturday in March looks good.
Right now, I could do any Saturday in March. If it's the 16th and we have a 9 o'clock start, I will likely be 30 minutes late.
The 16th's a little dicey.
I can support, I can do the 16th.
I'm kind of in the same situation as Bill. The 16th I can make work, but it's a little
Okay.
dicey. All the other ones I'm wide open.
I can do the 16th.
So would you rather do the 16th than the 9th? The 9th is this coming Saturday.
Could we get that posted in time?
I can't be there I've got a funeral on the 9th.
Okay, Dick can't be there. So 16 looks pretty good for everybody. Bill may be a little late. 16th is fine with me too. So here,
Okay with Ashley and Todd?
here, yeah, well, Ashley is, we need,
That's fine.
you can do it 16? Okay,
You want it, oh,
9
okay,
o'clock?
okay.
don't forget to get that on the record.
Oh, just for the record, we did receive a communication which Ed got out to everybody a day or two ago, I believe, from Jamie French concerning special use permits. That's all I need to say. Okay, I think the other items on the agenda can be waived, and we will take them up when we have more time. So, and Ed, see if you can get this room on the 16th. That would be best. If you can't, there's always the library or the senior center.
I think it's clear, but I'll have to double check.
It's probably clear. So, great. Well,
The next meeting is when?
so I think April 2nd
April 2nd, yeah, I got it.
I will not be here
on the 16th,
on April 2nd.
on April 2nd.
Connecting.
We might not need you.
Administrative office.
Well, that's not nice.
I'm fine with it.
I'd feel insulted.
I'm not.
Oh.
But
We
if
might-
you're
we
not
might-
here, we get your notes on the pre-application.
Yep.
Whatever you have, right?
Yep, if there's applications, I'll prepare everything in advance. I just won't be at the meeting. I will not be in the country.
Ooh, are you going someplace good, I hope?
Costa Rica.
I was gonna say Puerto Rico.
No. I already told you earlier today that I won't go there again.
Ed got it.
And Ashley, you don't see anything big coming down the pike for our April 2nd meeting?
We don't have a deadline right now. I mean, we haven't reached the deadline, so anything can happen, but
Yeah.
we also have.
I'm thinking of something like Vital at Tiverton Commons, because that would be a big time-consuming item. Huge.
Yeah.
You need-
Well,
They've
They've
partially
submitted.
submitted a further application.
but there's some conversation about what stage of review at this point they're
Yeah.
going for.
But that wouldn't involve you, that would be Sumara.
Yeah.
Samara, correct.
So, okay.
Is Nathan checking out Fish Road? There's a lot going on up there with soil and everything else.
Not without somebody telling me that he needs to, or telling him.
Normally, they would go out and check and to make sure the boundaries and everything with the wetlands. I don't know.
Well, what soil
Where-
movement is going on? Is it a project we approved? Is it just?
We haven't gotten the final plans, I heard. That's all I heard.
I think Rosemary is talking about
We don't
the
have a final
Harkins.
submission.
And we don't have a final plan that's been submitted, but they are doing some soil preparation or site preparation work. But that would be governed by our soil erosion and sediment control, which is the chapter 65 it's a standalone, but it's not being, I don't know, but that's not Nathan's responsibility, that's John Hoyle's responsibility.
Correct.
He specifically mentioned in the statute is the responsible party for making sure.
So I would say
So-
if you have a concern.
Take it to
send-
John.
Send it to us and we'll get it to John, or send it direct, you send your questions directly to John.
Okay,
Motion to adjourn?
so
I'll make
Rosemary's
that
going to make a
last.
privileged motion to adjourn.
At 9:50.
Does anybody else have anything else before we adjourn? Seeing nothing? Thank you so much for coming.